You're there to do war. Violence is a part of your life. So we train for the worst case scenario to the highest possible standard. Ranger Regiment is the Army's sharpest blunt object. You point the Ranger Regiment at a problem and they'll run there. They won't walk. But she walks out and she's got like an infant and a couple other kids. And then all of a sudden you just hear, she had a suicide vest on. Rocket here, rocket there, pull up, you're not gonna make it. Explosion happens, dog is deceased. Handler's hit bad. But if Iris hadn't been there, Kyle would be dead. I see this like monster Goliath of a dog losing his mind. Whose monster is that out there? He goes, oh, haha, yours. I was like, what?
Jared, welcome. Welcome to our show. Really happy to have you. Thank you for making the drive all the way up here. I know you left your house at what, 4 a.m. this morning?
4 a.m., yeah.
4 a.m. to be here. Really appreciate that. And for the folks at home, very, very happy to have Jared here with us. I'm going to give a brief intro, a brief bio, and then we're going to get right into it. So Jared Warren, former Staff Sergeant, 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. He did 7 total deployments between Afghanistan and Iraq. 5 years as a Special Operations canine handler, where he worked 3 different dogs. They were dual purpose, both EOD, explosives detection dogs, and apprehension dogs. And after 9 years of service, he left the military and is now the owner and founder of Southern State Canine, where he specializes in not only pet obedience, but also tactical integration of police canine, meaning taking all those years of experience out on the battlefield with your dogs. And we're going to get into that later, but how that's transitioning to the law enforcement realm and how you're not only training poodles and doodles on the side, but when the opportunity presents itself, helping police canine handlers be safer at their jobs. So before we get into it, I just want to find out a little bit more about you, kind of where you grew up, how you got into the military, and fast track us through your career. And there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And I want to first say a big thank you to Justin Brigney for putting us in touch with you. He said you're the man to have on, and so
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, you're the first military handler that we've had on.
Perfect.
And so very happy to have you here. So without further ado, Jared Warren.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I'm Jared Warren. I grew up in Collinsville, Illinois till I was 17, and, got dad to sign on the dotted line for me to, go into the service. Went to Collinsville High School. Joining the military was like something I really, really wanted to do. Special operations always interests me, because you grow up watching movies with like Navy SEALs and stuff like that, and told my dad that's what I wanted to do, and that I wanted to go as fast as possible.
You didn't goof around, man. I mean,
No.
17 years old, you got shipped off.
Yep. Yeah.
And what you signed up for right off rip, you didn't sign up to be a cook.
No.
You signed up for what?
I went into the Army with a Ranger option. So essentially what that means is I would join on the basis that I would go to Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. And kind of clear the air now for people that don't know, but just because you get your Ranger tab doesn't make you a Ranger, right? So like there's Ranger Battalion. Those guys are the cool dudes. Like they get to do all the fun stuff, kicking in doors, jumping out of planes, helicopters, the whole shebang. Ranger school is a leadership school. You want to be in the battalion. That's what makes you a Ranger. But I came into the Army with that option. It's the only way I was joining. There was no other way. It's the only way I was joining any branch was if I had the option to go and test myself. Just because from a young age, I've always tried to challenge myself because I felt like I had to. I was the older brother. I have a younger brother, and that's something that my dad really kind of instilled in us at a young age. It's like you go and you compete and you try. If you fail, oh well. But like,
No 10th place trophies in your household?
No, none. We don't get participation trophies. Yeah. It was you try your hardest, and you give it your best. And if you fail after that, you gave it your best, and you learned something from it. But my mentality was never like that. It was, I'm gonna do this till I die, and like that's the only way I'm quitting. It's like die first, then quit.
You think that's something your dad instilled in you?
Oh, 100%.
Now, we had talked earlier, your father also, similar background to myself.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my dad, I'm probably wrong on the time, but I think his term of service is as long as I am old. So he's a 29-year police officer. He's, been in that profession since I can remember. He does a whole gamut of things within that profession. Like, he's their like lead firearms instructor or something like that. But anyway, he puts on the academies and certifies everybody in firearms and stuff like that. I don't know the exact term,
Sure.
but he's a lieutenant now with Madison County Sheriff's Office.
Which, for those who don't know, that's outside of,
Yeah, right outside of St. Louis.
right,
Yeah.
which is no walk in the park. So
No.
I'm sure he's seen his fair share of action where he
yeah.
works.
Oh yeah, he's told me some crazy stories. I didn't want to go into police work. He told me if I ever did, he would kill me. Justin actually told me that too. So I was like, I don't know, dude. I don't know if I can do this dog stuff. I think I might just go be a cop. He's like, I'll fucking kill you.
This is after the military. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, no, dude, I'll kill you. You can
It's
do it.
funny, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same way now. Anybody that comes up to me that's, yeah, I want to be a police officer like you, or what can you tell me? So here's my best advice: be a fireman. Yeah. And my father did the same. He'd
Yeah.
take me on ride-alongs. We'd go chase bad guys. At the end of the night, he'd take me to the fire station and say, I know that was fun, but this is what you want to do.
Yeah.
And at that age, 16, 17, 18 years old, I wasn't interested in, sitting on my lazy boy watching movies and
No.
putting out fires. But I wanted the action. But
Yeah.
anyways,
I
yeah.
was the same way at 17, 18 years old. I was all full of, piss and vinegar. And like, when I finally got my contract with the Army where I got what I wanted, I got to go have the ability to go test myself thoroughly. 1st Battalion was the battalion that everybody talked about. That's where all the coolest guys were, outside of the dudes that did, like Black Hawk Down and stuff like that. Those dudes were getting after it. It was the toughest battalion to be in, supposedly. I can attest now it is.
So you had your choice and you picked them.
Yeah, I picked them because it was the hardest. And like, again, it's just my mentality. I wanted to be thoroughly tested. If I was meant to be there, like I want it to be known.
And we talked about something interesting downstairs. There's many steps to it. I mean, not only do you sign on the dotted line at 17, you go through your basic, you go through, I'm assuming, some kind of advanced training.
Yeah.
Then you get your choice and you pick the 1st Battalion.
Yeah.
But just because you've made it there, you're starting from scratch.
Oh yeah. You get there and like, it's this false belief that you have when you get there. You're like, oh, I'm somebody special. Like I belong to a very small
You made
group.
it.
Yeah, like I made it.
Yeah.
I'm there. No, you're a chicken in a swimming pool of sharks. And there's this saying that's just, it kind of goes around. It's like, it's easy to get your beret. It's harder to hold on to it. Because day one in battalion for me was just as hard, if not harder, than all the training that it took to get there. Because like, you have to prove yourself. You have to show your worth. Because if you don't, you're gone.
Which I find very interesting, that even though you passed all the tests, you got selected, you're there at any moment for anything. If you're not up to par, they can kick you out.
Yeah.
Which is, I think you were telling me earlier, that's not how it is in other parts of the military. That's not even how it is in police work. Like once you get sworn in, it's very difficult you have to be a complete idiot in order to, get your badge taken away from you.
Yeah.
You get many, many, many chances, but not where you went.
No. When you come to the Ranger Regiment, you're held to a high standard.
How old are you at this point when you get in there?
Just a little over 18. And you're, like I said, you're held to a high standard and you immediately have to prove your worth. I think my first day there, I had to take all of my equipment that I had just put in my barracks room. That's like maybe an 800 meter run away. And it's like 4 bags of equipment that weigh about like 80 pounds a piece. I'm like, all right, go grab all of that, bring it down here. You have 45 seconds. And if you don't do it, you're going to run it all back and do it again. So, you play the games, the physical games. They're going to see if you're going to quit. And they tell you, they give you the option. You're like, well, if you don't want to be here, if this sucks too much, like, we can get you out. We can get you to a good unit, maybe in Europe. And they hang that carrot in front of you.
Something cool and comfy.
Yeah. Are you going to choose, comfort and something easy, or are you going to struggle? And like, the best choice is always struggle, because it shows your character. And that tells those dudes that, the dudes whose respect you want to earn, they're like, no, I'm here. I'm here to stay.
And tell us about those guys as soon as you transfer into that unit.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a shock. You have this draft day where all the new guys get put in a conference room. They're standing behind the table. And in my case, we were standing. We weren't allowed to sit. We weren't good enough for the chairs yet. All the team leaders and squad leaders come in, and they're like, going through the line of us, like, he looks stout, he looks cool. And they draft you. And then those who don't get, picked, you just kind of get placed, right? But it was down to like, on my draft day, I remember this vividly. On my draft day, it was like me and one other guy. I was like, shit, man. Like,
it came down to you two?
Yeah, us two. I was like,
it's like dodgeball, picking teams.
I was like, dude, I'm like last pick. They must think I'm like trash or something. But anyway, these two team leaders come in there. One of them ended up being my team leader. He's a rough dude. I think he's like a UFC fighter now. But they're like, hey, there's only, one spot left, or in this platoon, there's one spot left in this platoon. What do you guys want to do? And I knew I wanted to go to first platoon. And I know that guy did too, because first platoon was like one of the better ones. So I was like, I'll fist fight him for it right now. I want to go to first platoon. They're like, all right, come on. Like, you're coming to first platoon. A lot of people would say that that's like, oh, that's brutal. It's like, well, you have to remember the place that you're at. You're there to do war. You're there to, learn how to effectively close distance with and terminate the enemies of the United States of America. That's your job. And violence is a part of your life. And a lot of people forget that. But when you display violence willingly, it gives you some points with some of the older guys. At least it used to.
Yeah, it's stark contrast to other parts of the population, other jobs, other job descriptions around the U.S. right now. Yeah. Even things have changed drastically in the police world. The way your drill instructors or your training advisors would walk you through the police academy. And then now, you hear these stories about people being able to present some little card that means, hey, their feelings are getting hurt and they need a little safe space.
Yeah, the stress cards or
ridiculous, whatever. Man. Ridiculous. It's sad. So anyways, at a very young age, you get selected. You go exactly where you want to go, the best of the best. And when you get there, though, literally day one, some of the guys that are already in your unit are coming off of however many tours. So these guys, and you tell it to us, what were these guys like?
So to me, they were like giants at that time. I mean, some of them were the same age as me, some a little bit older, but like when you meet your first team leader, that dude is the most intimidating dude that you'll ever meet. But I got there, these guys were coming off of a rotation to Afghanistan. That was pretty kinetic. They did some stuff. That's a buzzword. People like kinetic. That's nice. But I was just this new guy, like trying to be a sponge. And I was just immediately hated because I'm just like this new guy that they have to teach. Right?
Fresh out of high school.
Yeah, like I'm a problem. They see this like kid. I'm looking at these other kids, but they look like hard in the face, They seen
some shit.
Yeah. And I'm just like causing them all these problems. I don't know shit about shit. And like they're trying to go through normal routine and like I'm just jacking it up. And my team leader's just smoking me, yelling at me, all this stuff. Like my first day in battalion was the hardest day. I got told that I was going to get fired multiple times. And like I left work that day and I went home to my very empty barracks room. I was like, dude, what am I doing here? I think I actually called my dad. I was like, Dad, I don't know if I could do this. He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, dude, it's hard here. He's like, yeah, what did you expect? You expect a cakewalk? He's like, hang the phone up, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, do it again. was like, okay, fine.
Good for him, yeah.
Yeah. He won't let me slide.
Yeah.
You know? Which I think I take a lot of that now into being a parent now with my son. Maybe a little too much.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope. But yeah, these guys are coming home, and I just wanted to go on deployment. That was my sole want and desire. Well, little did I know, it's not just a free ride. You don't automatically get to go on deployment because you're part of the platoon. You again have to prove yourself physically, mentally. You have to understand your job. You have to understand your leader's job, their leader's job. You have to understand every bit of it, because at any point in time, if stuff goes bad, say like my team leader got killed and all the guys in front of me got killed, I get moved up.
Yeah.
Because that's what's expected of you as a ranger, is to be a leader.
At this point in time, you roughly knew when the next deployment was going to be. Was there a tight timeline? Like, hey, I have to prove myself by this?
Yeah, I had a rough idea of when it was going to be, and timelines shift.
Right.
We never really know until it's like almost there.
But you were trying, I'm assuming, getting ready for that next one.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I was on that next one. Because you join the Army, you join a specialized unit, you want to do your job, right? And I was chomping at the bit for it as hard as I could.
And to be clear, for those who don't know, the unit you're a part of is considered Special Forces.
Yeah, Special Operations, yep. But there's this thing, when you get to battalion, like, it's implied that you go to Ranger School. You get your tab and you become a leader. When you have your tab in Ranger Regiment and battalion, like, your life changes dramatically. Like, as a private, I had to, when I came to work, I had to run everywhere. There's no walking, right? When I got my tab, the first day I got my tab and I walked back into my company, I started to run. Then I was like, oh, wait a second, I don't have to do that anymore. And I walked around, to my platoon's side, and it gives you a feeling of accomplishment because you earned it. It's hard, right? Especially, trying to go through on the first time. God forbid you recycle and then you have to stay in Ranger School, which, if anybody listening to this has ever done that, then you know the pain of what that is.
You were able to make it through on your first one?
Yeah, I was first time go. I told myself if I failed that I just wasn't going to go back.
How long was that school?
62 days. As a matter of fact, I went, and the day before I left, my team leader said, he's like, if you fail, don't bother coming back, because it will be the worst day of your life.
So when you make it through, you get your tab, how much time later passes before the first deployment?
Maybe a month and a half, 2 months.
So it was really, everything was tight timeline for you, man. There wasn't a lot of waiting around.
No, we left and I was finally starting to grow my hair back from my bald head from Ranger School. And a lot of people will give me shit even to this day. It's like, oh, you were babied on your first deployment. You don't know your first deployment as a private. It's like, don't get mad at me because I did it faster than you.
Right.
But being a tab on your first deployment, it comes with perks. You are a young guy that then gets to mentor leaders, and you don't have to do the dumb shit that the privates have to do. I get to learn how to lead. I get to learn the inner workings of planning for high-level operations and stuff like that, and really what it takes to excel.
How old are you at this point?
I think I was about to turn 19.
It's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Incredible that at that age,
yeah,
you're overseas in charge of other guys.
Yeah.
And being part of all of this.
Yeah.
So walk us through that. I mean, it's wild how fast that ride is. But
and
where's your first deployment?
Afghanistan. Yeah.
Tell us about that, man.
So we went to Bagram, which I'm sure you're familiar with because Bagram closes the whole debacle that happened overseas.
The Biden special.
Yeah. I get put into a leadership position in what's called a weapon squad. It's just machine guns, right? Big ass machine guns. But I had 2 young dudes under me, and I had the most senior squad leader in the platoon as my squad leader. So that's the dude that's teaching you everything. And as a young guy and as a young leader, that was awesome to have.
How old is he, you think, at this point?
I think he was 25, 26.
So, I mean,
that's an old guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's funny, we say we're regiment old. It's when you're 25 years old, but you feel like you're 55.
Right.
Because your body's just beat up. your spirit is beat up, but like your adrenaline system is like, yo, you still got to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't actually old by any stretch of the imagination. He's quite a young guy, but very, very experienced.
I mean, how many deployments do you think he's been on at this point?
Maybe 10 to 12.
Right. So he's very seasoned.
Yeah, because like those guys, when they were at the level that I was at, I mean, they were going all the time. Their op tempo was way quicker, right? Because this is X amount of years ago, closer to the beginning of the GWAT.
And what year is this? Not bring us up to speed. What year is this on your first
This
deployment?
is 2015.
So the war's still in full swing, but maybe
absolutely
not quite the same tempo as in the earlier years.
Yeah, definitely not in the early years. But I mean, everyone's doing operations still, you know. Our first one we get out on was kind of a softball one, thank God, because it was like I was like brand new again. I get out there, like, you know, you join the Army, you want to do your job, and then you get there and you're like, oh shit.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
What did I sign up for?
Right? I find myself in the pitch black of Afghanistan at night. And I'm like, man, I'm really here. And then you immediately have to focus, right? Like, okay, what's the task? What's the purpose? Where do I need to go? What direction do I need to be moving? It's not a break. You don't just like walk there. You're moving, and you have to be vigilant, and you have to be on your P's and Q's, and you got to be controlling your guys, making sure they're safe. My very first kinetic target I was on, we go into this, for lack of a better word, this shithole valley, right? And we're walking in there, and some bad shit had happened before we even got there. Like one of our partner force guys like fell off a cliff that he didn't see because it's dark out. You're walking under night vision. And some bad dudes had taken over this area. They're killing all the other men that like didn't agree with what they agreed with. And I remember I was sitting on this ridge with my machine gun and my private, and we're watching the operation unfold. And I see this chick, this female walk out, and she's like, because we got a pretty high elevation, you can see down into the compound. But she walks out and she's got like an infant and a couple other kids. And this was really like my first exposure to this. You know, the interpreter's trying to talk to her and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you just hear just explosion. She had a suicide vest on.
With her kids?
Yeah.
So her and the kids, she took it all.
Yeah, just gone. And like that. I was like, oh.
And the interpreter, I'm assuming.
Oh no, they had enough standoff that I don't think they got hurt.
How far away were you from this?
Well, it was a couple 100 meters, but it was like close enough. You could feel the percussion of the blast. But then, like, you know, a firefight ensues because there's bad guys in the house.
Right. This is like what starts it off?
Yeah. That kind of kicked everything off. And like, we end up sending the partner force in there. They get into a barricaded shooter situation. And it ends up being real bad. Anyway, we evac some dudes. We stay there because we can't get out because it's almost daytime. And if you're walking out in the daytime as an American force in a bad area, like, it's not good for you. So we stay there maybe like a day. And then we had to walk like, I want to say like 10K out or something like that, 8 to 10K out to meet our helicopter. And they picked us up that night. But that was really my first experience of like, I don't know, war and death, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But then it got kinetic from there. Pretty much like every target we went on, there was a gunfight somewhere. The last target we went on, it freaked me out because my team leader was freaked out. Because it was 2 weeks before we were going home. And usually that doesn't happen. So they're like, hey, you guys are going to go do this. Be a quick one, in and out. You guys will be done. Right? And I remember my team leader being like, man, 2 weeks from home, like, this is not going to be quick. So we go down.
And if you can, like, what about this operation got the spidey senses going?
There's just a lot of bad dudes, man. And like where it was geographically, it was on a border of a very bad area between two countries. But there's an area in between those two countries that's pretty much like gangland or terrorist land that nobody's allowed into besides them, right? So we knew that was there, and we knew we couldn't affect it. So that had everybody on the fritz. So we were trying to get in there and get out as fast as possible.
And you going in there, or you going right on the outskirts of this?
Like we landed right there.
Daytime, nighttime?
Nighttime. We do everything.
And what, if you can talk about it, what is the point of this particular operation?
To capture or terminate a certain individual.
Okay.
But we get there, and it starts off pretty quiet. I was like, man, that's going to be boring. It's not, because we had another platoon landing at a different location, actioning a target as well. They start fighting. Then all of a sudden we start fighting. And like gunshots are going off everywhere. We finally, get through what we needed to get through. We got our guy, made confirmation of it, and then we're like, all right, peace. And we go line up in what's called PZ posture. It's like pickup zone posture. You're pretty much in a line. And we're looking at the border. I remember I can see the sunset to this day. Like I remember the sun was coming up. I was like, damn, like kind of cutting it close. And then all of a sudden, like it was like rolling hills, and it was just the hills just ignited. It's like we had vehicles driving up on us, PKMs, Dishkas. It was just this giant firefight. And we're just online in the smallest ditch that we can find.
How many guys?
There were about 28 of us, 30 of us.
Versus who knows what, right?
At the time, we didn't know. But knowing now, it was sizable. It wouldn't have been good for us. But luckily, in the later stages of the war, you had a lot of overhead cover. Mm-hmm. Thank God we did. Like one of the Apache pilots who was covering us and the people that were coming to get us, like she got some super high level aviation award or something like that, because she pretty much sat there in front of all of us and took fire.
From this mission? From this
mission, yeah. So she literally hovered there and was just engaging people.
Badass, man.
Yeah, like the balls on her, right? This was the first time I ever almost got killed, because our helicopters come in, guns are going everywhere. I'm like, oh, this is cool, but this is scary as hell at the same time. But we go to get up to run onto the aircraft, and then I'm getting up and grabbing my machine gun, and I turn like this, and I remember like seeing my private Evan, and all of a sudden there's just this hot blast, like right under my nods, knocks me back on my ass. I'm like, what the fuck is this? It's like Mike Tyson just punched me in the face. Well, I guess a round went right under my nods, like knocked my nods off my helmet. And I'm like trying to like figure out where I am. And I come to with my private grabbing me like He-Man. And this dude's like a string bean. He's like 6'2", $150. Mm-hmm. But just grabbing me and ripping me up off the ground. Like it was, his job, which it is. Then we finally get on the helicopter. We exfil out of there, and they got to fly real low to the ground, so you're not an easy target. And like, I just remember my buddy, he said he plugged into the comms on the bird, and he's like, I had to unplug. I'm like, why? He goes, because the pilots were screaming like, hey, rocket here, rocket there, pull up, you're not going to make it. He's like, didn't want to hear it. That one really stuck with me. Because even in later deployments, when we get a target that's kind of close to going home, I'm like,
yeah, it's just that bad heebie-jeebies, man. I think we get the same, not that it's the same comparison, but in law enforcement, when you're on your last year at work, your last month at work, your last week, your last day, it's like, man, if it's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Like, is it going to be this stuff?
Yeah, man, they made it this far.
Yeah.
But this is just the end of your first deployment. And so just, not to gloss over it, you took a round to your nods?
So right under, like right in front of my face. I just want to clarify, I didn't get shot.
Yeah.
I thought I did. But it knocked my nods off my helmet. So I can't see, and like it's dark, and I'm trying to run on this aircraft. And luckily, like I said, I have my private like pulling me.
It's crazy.
And guiding me. I'm trying to like carry my machine gun, get my nods on my head, and like figure it out, unfuck myself. Yeah, it was rough, man. It really makes you reevaluate yourself. But as a young single guy, like I didn't I didn't really care about it.
Right.
Because like, what, I die, my dad misses out on a son. Like, that sounds bad, but like,
Yeah.
I didn't have
Yeah.
anybody depending on me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my first deployment, and got back and like was laterally promoted to corporal, which allowed me to just mentor more team leaders and like learn more. I got more opportunities at leadership positions where I ultimately excelled, and got to do the real job, the job that everybody wants to do when they get into Ranger Regiment, is be a team leader, mainly an alpha team leader. If you asked me today if I could go back to be an alpha team leader, I would tell you yes, because it was the funnest time of my life. Besides from like having my children and stuff, but like leading men into potentially dangerous situations and then coming out of them, and then being the linchpin of how that operation is going to go. Right? Like a lot is on your shoulders as a team leader.
Can you tell me the difference between an alpha team leader and a non-alpha team leader?
So in the way that we had our squads organized, and it varied company to company, everybody's got different TTPs and SOPs. But at least in my company, your alpha team leader was your senior team leader. That's the dude that's like looking at squad leader soon. Pretty much if the squad leader was out of the picture, that dude can do everything. Your Bravo team leader is kind of like your little pit bull, usually a real little muscly little shit of a guy, nothing but anger and hate flowing through him. And like, if you point him in a direction, he's going to go and he's going to bust down every wall on the way there. But ultimately he's learning from the alpha team leader. Right? It's just a successive mentorship all the way down to private, which is something that's glossed over in Ranger Regiment, I think. And that they've kind of lost sight of, is like, Ranger Regiment is the only place that I can think of that regularly gets kids from the street and turns them into men that will go overseas in the dead of night and kill for their country if they have to. Right? And like 18, 19-year-old kids. And like, I don't think that that's stated enough how much of a mentorship you get there. Like, that's where I learned to be a man, right? Like, I have a father, but like, dad's not there at this point. You know, my squad leader was my dad. My platoon sergeant was my dad. They teach you kind of like your left and rights.
Yeah, man. It's, I mean,
I'm sure it's kind of like that in police work too.
Yes, depending upon which department you work for.
Yeah.
Right, how much action you get. But yeah, I mean, again, it's hard to make the comparison.
Yeah.
But pulling out of the back of the police station for the first time with a gun and a badge, and you're in charge, like that's it.
Yeah.
You're making life and death decisions. You don't know what that next call is going to be. Could be an easy day out. It could be a really rough day. And there's plenty of action. I think the difference, because I think about it a lot, because it's one thing I never did in my life, was join the military. It's a big regret to this day. I mean, I'm still proud of what I did do. I think you guys get depending upon what unit you're in over there as well, but you guys are getting a lot of action, hardcore, like condensed in a short time period.
Oh yeah.
Where we're getting maybe days and weeks with nothing, and then you can have that one hot call that's just off the charts. And again, you know, it's hard to make a comparison, and I'm not even trying to, but yeah, at 19, 20, 21 years old, depending upon when you get hired as a police officer. I got hired when I was pretty young, but yeah, there were some nights I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Wow. But we get to go home at the end of the night, you know, if you make it through your shift, so you can kind of decompress a little bit. But then you're back to it the next day, you know, shift after shift, if you're not picking up extra shifts. But what I was going to say is, you know, like you said, your father, who was a police officer, you know, did what he could do, but can't put you in a war zone at 17.
No.
So you definitely fast-tracked, to put it very lightly, like your maturity level.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, too, what I found interesting, as I haven't really thought about this, but I matured very quickly as a young police officer. Like all my friends who I went to high school with are still smoking and joking.
Yeah.
And here I am, 21, 22 years old, doing whatever it is we do, getting into some shit at work. And there starts to be a divergence because maybe, just for argument's sake, Monday through Friday, I'm on the beat doing my thing. And then, hey, it's Saturday and they're having a pool party at such and such house.
Yeah.
And I'm there and it's like,
yo, we're not even the same.
yeah, it's weird. And it's not like I don't love my friends, but it's just, what do you even talk about at that point?
Yeah.
Like, what'd you do? Oh, yeah, I had a bad day at work, says, one of my friends who's a waiter. I'm like, oh, yeah? Yeah. And what do I talk about? They like to hear the war stories and stuff, but at some point it's hard to even, and again, this podcast is not about me at all. I just find that interesting because you're overseas, but now you are 19 years old and you've been in some shit. And I wonder what your other 19-year-old friends are doing still back,
Oh, yeah.
In Illinois where you left them.
Yeah, so, dude, I can tell you, it was funny because it was like one of the only like couple times I went home on leave. I got back from that deployment and we kind of like went into a little bit of decompressed time and then a little bit of training, then like into Christmas. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go home. I haven't seen Dad in a little bit. So
Is this after your first deployment?
Yeah.
Okay.
After my first deployment. So I go home and I get there and like everything looks duller. I'm like, well, this is still the same shit. Same as I left it. Right. And then like a couple of my buddies hit me up from high school and like we go out for, something to eat and I'm talking to them. They're doing the same shit. Went over to so-and-so's house the other weekend to like smoke or do whatever. Or like, oh yeah, we went to this bar the other night. It's like, man, I don't want to be around you guys because I've done so much more than you. And that sounds like really like egotistical, but it's like you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang around. Like I just don't have time to hang out with people like that.
Yeah.
Did
they say anything to you like, hey, you're different or you changed?
Yeah. No, they were like, well, you're a lot more like, I don't know if stoic was used, but I was just quiet. I listened a lot more.
Yeah.
Just because like as a private, that's what it's like, shut up and listen. But you learn a lot from people if you just let them talk. Hence why podcasts are great. But I was just listening to these dudes talk and I'm like, what is going on here? You guys have no like vision for how you want your life to be. Luckily, like a couple of them figured it out. And that's awesome. Some of them are still doing the same shit that they've been doing.
They haven't grown up yet. Yeah.
No. And like I had dudes that I was looking up to that had visions for their life and like knew where they wanted to go. And I was like, I wanted to be like that. And I think as a young person in the military, like that's the best thing you can do for yourself is like give yourself a mentor. Like give yourself something to aim for, to shoot for, and then go after that. Yeah, that was one of the very few times I went home. Didn't go home much after that.
I was going to say, you're probably anxious to get back.
Yeah, I was. I was ready to get back. I was ready to get to work.
Yeah.
I missed the boys. Like the camaraderie in that type of unit is insane, which I'm sure like in the police world, y'all's camaraderie is the same. You may be out there on a call, but if your buddy's working the same shift or beat or whatever, you know who's coming to back you up and you're like thanking God. Right?
Yeah.
But I missed the boys, got back into training, deploying, and it was pretty much rinse and repeat, man.
Yeah, and what was the cycle there you were telling me? 3 months overseas, 4 months back?
Yeah, roughly.
So you don't get much of a break.
No, there's no breaks. If we weren't training, then we were either in the gym, eating. Like your life is very simple as a Ranger, right? Like, or a member of a special operations unit in general. You train your essential tasks, your mission essential tasks. You train those, you train your men, train yourself physically,
Just always be operational ready.
Yeah, you have to be ready. Because like with every special operations unit, like the 75th Ranger Regiment can be called out at any point in time if you're on, your alert status. And sometimes you got to be ready to go in less than 2 hours. And like 2 hours, 1 minute, you can be on a plane heading to another country.
Yeah.
So you have to keep yourself in peak physical condition as much as possible because Rangers like to drink. Right? Like we'll drink a town dry if we go there. But you got to keep yourself ready. You got to keep yourself ready for not just yourself, but for the team.
Right.
Because your young guys are counting on you if you're a leader. And then your older guys are counting on you to maintain and make shit happen.
At 19 years old.
Yeah, 19
That's the part that keeps sticking with me. The level of trust that, and that's, again, putting it lightly, but a 19-year-old is responsible for other men and responsible to make sure this operation.
Some of which were older than me, which was a trip to me. Like, here I am, now like 19, 20-ish years old, and I have guys under me that are like in their 30s.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't have many, but I had a couple come through that were under me, like in their early 30s.
They just had a different career path.
Yeah. Maybe they went to college. Maybe they did some time at a normal job. Some dudes go into law enforcement and then go in the military. Some dudes just like sit at home, I guess. I don't know. He just wanted to come fight the war late.
Right.
Then they complain. They're like, oh, I didn't get as much combat. It's like, well, bro, like you had all this time.
Yeah.
Where were you, 5 years ago? But, yeah, that was a trip for me. Like, I didn't know how to handle somebody being older than me under my supervision.
Yeah.
It was difficult.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever easy.
No, but it prepared me a lot for what I did later on in my canine career. And then like, as a business owner now, it prepared me for a lot, as far as like managerial skills go and like talking to people.
Sure. Well, let's talk about your second deployment.
Yeah. So my second deployment was nothing special, man. It was just like, we got stationed at this like offsite base that was near Bagram. It was a quick flight away. It's long since gone now. But there we were in kind of an advise and assist role where we were training people. And then we were on call if the strike force needed help. Because when you're in Afghanistan, you're part of a strike force and then you're part of like a contingency unit, if you will. Literally my days were eat and get in the gym. That was my job. And train my guys. So if I wasn't in the gym, I was stuffing my face in the DFAC. If I wasn't stuffing my face in the DFAC, I was training my guys. If I wasn't doing any of those three in combination, I was sleeping. My third deployment was one of those same ones, like a no notice. We had just gotten home from our last one. We were actually training in California. And we got a call like right before we were going back from California to go home to rest. Like, hey, no rest. When you guys get back, pack your shit. You're gone. Like, okay, cool. So we go there and like nothing really significant happens. Like we get out there, some explosions happen. We get on target and some stuff goes down like off in the distance. But we were there as an overwatching contingency asset. We ended up coming home. And then right around this time, I was entering into like my alpha team leader role. Whereas like we were doing a lot of training. I was making sure my guys were ready because I knew we had a deployment coming up. At the same time, I started seeing dudes over in Canine. I saw them when I was a young guy too. And they were just, dude, do you mind if I tell you the story real quick?
Of course, that's what we're here for.
Man. So as a private, my first range day, I remember like running out to the range to go get my ammo, to go put in my magazines. My squad leader's screaming at me. And I run past these two guys and they got a dog in the middle of them. And this dog starts losing it on me, just like barking his ass off at me. And I just run past it. And one of the dudes, he was a handler at the time. I didn't know him by his name then, but I run past this dog. The dog's losing his shit. And he's like, hey, you come back here. And I'm like, oh man, what'd I jack up? Because I don't even know this NCO, right? He's like, come over here. What's your name? And I told him my name. He goes, well, you're not going to stand at parade rest for the sergeant major? And I'm looking around. And I'm like, I don't see any sergeant major, sergeant. He goes, and he points down to the dog.
Okay.
And like, I'm this young dude, and I started laughing, which is like mistake number one.
Oh my God.
And I was like, Sergeant, that's a dog. He goes, you don't think I know it's a dog? And like, starts losing his shit. He goes, that's Sergeant Major Jari. little did I know, this dog has more deployments than most of the men I know. Very, very seasoned dog, knowing that now. But he's still just sitting there losing his mind at me as I'm getting yelled at by this NCO. And he's like, Sergeant Major's telling you to do some fucking push-ups.
This is great.
Yeah. And when you're a private and you don't have your tab, you have to elevate your feet because you haven't been to mountains yet. So you go, you find something, you put your feet on them, you elevate your feet, and you start doing push-ups. Well, I'm doing push-ups and this fucking dog is barking at me.
That's great.
Yeah. And it's just another ego check when you're there. Like, a dog is better than you.
Yeah.
You have to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And that has always stuck with me, that I had to do push-ups and stand at parade rest for a dog.
That's hysterical, man.
Yeah. But
so this is like your first exposure to the canine world. And
yeah. And those dudes were always the coolest guys, right? They always had the most tattoos. They, didn't have to listen to anybody roughly because they're NCOs. They kind of manage themselves. And then they're in charge of this dog on top of it.
So they're part of the Rangers, but they're like a side unit.
Yeah. We call them enablers. But it's just a section. Like, this is the canine section. You have like your sniper section, and then you have your tech guy, whatever section.
And not just anybody can get into these.
No. And you have to have your tab before you can go into any of those. Tab's a prereq to do literally everything else. They were usually pretty seasoned guys. They'd had like 4 or 5 deployments. So they knew what they were doing. They didn't have to be taught how to ranger. They had to be taught how to dog handle. Because if you can do the ranger portion of it perfectly, and all you got to learn is dog handling, operational dog handling, I should say. And like, really want to highlight that too, is like, there's a difference between handling and being a trainer. Those are 2 very different things for like people that watch this and they're like, oh, that's the same thing. He's a trainer. It's like, no. When you're a handler, you are there to effectively employ your tool to benefit the team, right? Those dudes knew their shit. They were the coolest guys. Longest hair, most tattoos. They took no shit from anybody. They told platoon sergeants no. Like, E7s, like when they wanted to use the dog that they knew in a method that was not, good for the dog, them, the team, or the mission, those dudes would be straight up like, no, find another way. This is like an E5 telling an E7 that.
It's very interesting. There's the same thing happens in the police world.
Yeah.
With our dogs. Same thing. You look at the police canine handlers. They are the men, they are the women. They are like, man, that is the coolest place to be.
Yeah.
But we also give them, even though their rank may not state that, but you will have just a police officer, lowest ranking guy. But if he's a canine handler and he gets called to the scene and there's a captain or there's a lieutenant or there's a commander, even if the chief of police says, hey, deploy the dog, we teach them and we drill this into them. Do not deploy your dog when it doesn't make sense for these number of reasons, because you're the canine handler, you're the thinking part of this team. And you still see it to this day in all these different videos where you're seeing sergeants or other officers or a commander on scene saying, deploy the dog. And sometimes the handler deploys a dog on something the dog should never have been deployed on to begin with.
Exactly.
Or their dog wasn't ready for the mission at hand. And anyways, we actually run those drills with the rookies in the canine unit, before they actually hit the street. Sometimes we'll bring them to the scene of not a real scene, but like a stage scene. Mm-hmm. And it's always about deploying your dog. Every time we bring your dog to a training scenario, it's all about getting the dog out and deploying it, unless it's not. And in these scenarios, we'll bring them up to a scene that's fabricated, and we'll give them a scenario. And it's one of the scenarios that's like just under the threshold of what you should deploy a dog for.
Yeah.
And you'll see these guys just out of bad habit, just, okay, let me get my dog out.
Yeah.
And then, you just failed this exercise. This is not a deployable, maybe it's a misdemeanor. You didn't listen to the fine details. This was a juvenile, or this actually fits a criteria of a SWAT call out. So this is above and beyond your capabilities. So think before you just bring your dog out.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's actually part of the oral board before they even get selected to come to the canine unit. What would you do in this scenario? And basically the scenario is you're called out. There's such and such a scenario. It does not fit the criteria. but there's a commanding officer on scene that's demanding that you bring your dog out and use it. What do you say to that commanding officer? And the answer is, sir, ma'am, respectfully, we cannot deploy the dog.
Exactly.
No, but I'm authorizing you can't. No, it violates our SOPs. We can't. So I get that. That's pretty neat. That's the same over there.
Yeah, it's when I saw them do that. Most guys will see that and be like, oh, they get to tell people to go fuck themselves or whatever. It's like, yeah, to a certain degree they do. But when I looked at it, I was like, those dudes know their job well enough that they can tell somebody who's exponentially more experienced than them operationally, no, we're not going to do that. And here's why. The why was always very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I heard a handler explain why they're not going to do something and then offer, results or not results, but recommendations, right? Like that dude knows his job. He knows his job. He knows everybody else's job. You got to be a special kind of person to be able to run yourself, run this thing that can't speak English and like licks its own butt, and then be able to intelligently and effectively communicate in high stress scenarios to superiors and subordinates. And if there's an absence in leadership, you're expected to lead. And like kind of like you said earlier, when you're the canine guy, you're taken at face value. You are the subject matter expert of that dog, and what you say goes, because nobody else can run that thing except you. And if there's two handlers on the ground, like the other guy can, but he's got a dog too, So everybody looks to you and like whatever you say, it goes because you're the expert. That's something I think young guys, at least that were in my unit when I was in a supervisory role, we told them like, hey, you got to work on your presence as a leader, because you may have to tell a first sergeant, a platoon sergeant, no, this is not an effective way to use this asset. Here's some recommendations.
Right. You better know your shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you better be able to, get it across intelligently and respectfully. And if you need to do it disrespectfully, so be it. But you need to be able to do it intelligently first. And I know that's how my mentors taught me when I got the canine. That's how I taught my guys, because professionalism is key.
So suffice it to say, from early on, it was something that caught your eye, something you thought about getting into
100%.
When the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah. But and we'll kind of flash back, but like I was loving being an alpha team leader at that point. Like I loved mentoring young guys, making them killers. Maybe killers is a bad word. Making them operationally capable, right? I loved getting them to a level and then they become dangerous. And I loved blowing stuff up. I loved shooting all the time. I loved, running around on target and training targets. Like I loved training just as much as I loved deployment.
Would you guys say that you set your training up to be as dangerous as a deployment?
More.
Right.
We always train for the worst possible outcome.
And let me say this now, and I'll look at the camera when I say this. Some of you police canine units out there are training like a bunch of fucking pussies. Some half-ass training. It's an 8 or 10 hour shift. You're putting like an hour into training. You go eat some fucking pizza. You get all fucking fat. And then you go home early. When you're not putting your reps in, you're not setting up, and this is for the trainers and the supervisors of those units, you're not setting up realistic training scenarios where your guys and gals are getting killed in training. You should be killing them in training. And I mean that physically, but mentally. So if they're getting hit with a sim round or you're firing off blanks, they need to know what it's like when they fucked up. But too often they're setting up these training scenarios where it's like super fucking easy win, or it's just for the dog and not for the thinking part of the unit.
I hate that shit.
Oh, and then they get all fucking butthurt when they die.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you just got your ass handed to you on this this training scenario. And they're like, well, but that's not fair. Bitch! What? It's not fair?
Life isn't fair.
But you didn't tell me the guy was armed. Well, motherfucker, that's not how it happens in real life either. Sometimes you know he's armed, sometimes you don't know. You won't know till you're getting shot at. And so we dealt with a lot of that. And still to this day, you'll just see these guys half-assing it through training, and that's why I asked you that key question, because you do hear about that from the Special Forces community, is that sometimes the training's more fucking dangerous than the deployment.
Oh, 100%.
Maybe, as it should be, but
Yeah. We always train for the worst possible outcome, because everything, if we're in real life and that doesn't happen and everything is below that worst possible outcome, we can handle it.
Yep.
Because it's not as bad as we trained.
Yeah.
And it sounds cliche, but like, we don't train for time, I'm sure, sometimes you fall into that, but like, we train for the standard. And like what Ranger Regiment is, we present a standard for the rest of the Army, right? So we train for the worst case scenario to the highest possible standard that we can affect. And then based off of that, like, we can pretty much handle anything. Sounds egotistical, but if you're not egotistical and special
would you say earlier something about how you would describe the Rangers?
Yeah.
The sharpest blunt thing or something?
So the Ranger Regiment is the Army's sharpest blunt object. You point the Ranger Regiment at a problem and say, that's a problem. I need it gone, and I need it gone by tomorrow. They'll run there. They won't walk. And they'll do it with, 60-pound bags, upwards of 100-pound bags.
And it'll be handled.
It'll be gone. It's not going to be a problem anymore.
Right.
The problem therein lies, how do you clean up the problem sometimes? Because like, Rangers we're not nice and easy. Like, we break shit, we blow shit up. Like, but yeah, we're effective. And
I think we'll pause here. We'll take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk about you entering into that canine world, what that was all about. Tell us about your dogs. Tell us about some of those deployments. Really excited to get into that part.
Sure, man. Awesome.
This podcast is brought to you by DIY Canine, where we help you learn how to train your dog from zero to hero.
All right, we're back. In this section, really want to talk about how you got into the canine unit there, what it was like training-wise, what it was like with your first dog, and talk about some of your deployments with your dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first got into canine, I was finishing up my alpha team later time. I already had some friends that were in canine, and I kind of mentioned some interest in it to them. And they're like, yeah, man, we'll put your word out to our boss and see how you feel.
Is this something you apply for? You're hand selected?
So you're hand selected.
So you can't even put your name in a hat? Like,
no. And initially when I was going into canine, you kind of had to have a little bit of, you had to have some skin in the game. You had to have some deployments. You had to be an E5, right? A sergeant. And then you kind of had to have a buddy who knew you, who could vouch for you, that was in canine, right? You had to have a good rep. Luckily I had some great friends in there. I didn't have a bad reputation in battalion. I was a hard worker, quick learner. I was already seasoned, I didn't have to learn a whole lot, but I expressed some interest to them. I was like, hey man, this might be something that I want to do. And they're like, all right, cool. We'll send your name to the boss. So a couple months goes by, and I was looking at the next position up at the line squad too. I was looking at squad leader, but it was going to take a little bit. Like, I was going to have to sit there for a little bit until I got my squad. But I was really interested in the dog stuff. So my buddy called me, and he was like, his name's Tom. Tom calls me. He's like, hey, do you mind coming by the kennel? And I'm like, yeah, man, absolutely. Like, I'll be there. He's like, just come hang out for a day. And like, I know what that is. It's like a feel out session.
sure.
Because it's a small group of dudes. And 175, you're kind of tucked off into a corner where like you're outside of the footprint of, the head shed and the brass.
And if you don't mind, how many guys are in 1st Battalion and how many are in the canine unit, ratio-wise?
If I had to give a rough estimate to it, there's probably anywhere between the range of like 3,200 to 3,500 guys in 1st Battalion, if you include, and that's like Rangers. If you broke that down to like infantrymen, it would be a smaller number, right? But 32 to 3,500, and then in the canine section, to include our kennel master, who wasn't a handler, there were 12 of us.
Okay. So very small, very
Yeah.
select.
And that's also including our veterinary technician who didn't handle.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a very small percentage.
Yeah, a very small percentage.
Okay.
And that's why they hand select, because you have to be able to operate yourself and your dog independently with no oversight. That's why they kind of wanted an E5 or up, already had some deployments, didn't need to learn anything about rangering, right? So they had me come hang out for a day. You know, I was having a party. I was like, dude, this is great. Like, nobody over here can tell me what to wear. Like, I'm in my own fence. Like, I have some autonomy here.
Yeah.
Right? And then all the dogs were just, it was overwhelming and intimidating, but it was so cool.
Have you taken any bites or anything on your first day out, or what would they have you doing?
No, so typically, at least when I was coming in there, they didn't like immediately pull you in and just do the thing where they stick you in the suit and like test your gangster. They legit like want to hang out with you. They want to see how you think. They'll like, the senior handlers were asking me questions. Like, why do you think the dog's doing that? And the civilian trainer there, who's a legend, he would talk to me, you know, feel me out too. And like,
Is he former law enforcement?
he's former Ranger.
Okay.
So our civilian trainer, I should have talked about that earlier. His name's Steve May. So Steve May is a plank holder in the 175 kennel. Like, he helped stand that program up. Him, guys like Trey Pinella, some other guys, I can see their faces, but I can't remember their names right off the top of my head. Those dudes kind of stood that thing up. But he came back and he was the civilian trainer, and, you know, he just advises and assists with training and, you know, dog stuff. But I'm watching all this doing, because they're working the dogs, right? We're doing the scent wall. If it's the end of the day, we're doing some scent wall work. And I remember the ops NCO, which is the most senior guy, right? Which ended up being the assistant kennel master. He was running his dog, and this dog's name was Roland. Had a history of being an asshole. But him and this guy named Kyle, they were an awesome team. It was like artwork. But they're doing the scent wall. Roland comes back, gets his Kong, and, you know, Kyle's shooting the shit with somebody. Anyway, tells Roland to out. He's done. Like, you're going back up. Training's over. And I remember Steve May telling me, he's like, well, it's been a couple weeks. They're probably going to have a fight, because dog wasn't out.
He said right off rip.
Yeah.
He goes, here it comes.
Yeah, he goes, it's been a couple weeks. And I was like, couple weeks for what? And then whack. It's like Roland attaches himself to Kyle's hand.
Just spits the ball and takes his hand.
Yeah. Because Kyle was trying to, like, you know, now that I think about it, probably the wrong thing to do, but like strong arming him to get the Kong back.
Yeah.
Bites Kyle. And like, the next thing I know, this dog's like 6 foot in the air by his vest. And he's screaming at him. He's like, are you done? You know, like, are you done with this? And I'm like, oh man. And this dog is just like, blah, like losing his mind, still trying to bite Kyle. Puts him down. Everything goes back to normal. And they just walked inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what was that? You know, that's been a couple weeks. They're due for a fight. And like, that kind of took me by surprise at first. 'Cause I was like, why would that dog bite its own handler?
Mm.
It's like, well, that dog is real. That's the dog you want, right? To a certain extent. But that dog's willing to, you know, stand up for himself. He's independent. He wants to possess shit. Like, he is confident enough to go out and fight for himself, which is the dog you want. And so I get through my feel out day. They're like, hey, thumbs up from us. We like you. So I go back and I tell my platoon sergeant, like, hey, I want to go to canine. And when you tell a line platoon sergeant that to them is the equivalent of quitting.
Right.
Right? They're like, oh, you don't want to be a squad leader. Well, what the fuck are you doing here? Da 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 da.
And they've invested a lot of time in it.
Yeah,
energy
yeah.
into you at this point.
And like, rightly so, man. And I get it, right? Like,
Was that a tough conversation to have with him?
It was tough but quick. Right.
Yeah,
I was like,
you made your mind up.
yeah, I was like, I want to go to dog. He was like, okay, why? I told him why. He goes, okay, those are good reasons. He's like, this is going to stifle your career. And he kind of gave me the right act, if you will, which I didn't
Rather
care.
than promoting up, which you said
Yeah.
you were on the cusp of maybe doing that. You're kind of doing more of a lateral move.
Yeah. Which I didn't care. I was like, no, I want to go do this. Right. Because that's the carrot that they dangle in front of you as a private is like, well, if you go get your tab, you can go be a sniper. You can go be a canine handler. You can go do this, that, the other. Which is kind of jacked up if you think about it afterwards. Is like, then they give you shit for it when you want to go do it. But anyway, so made my decision. I rotate over to the kennel, pull all my shit over there, and
How soon after your tryout day, so to speak, are you slid over?
I want to say it was probably about a week.
Okay.
And then I was over there. Because I told my boys that were over there, I was like, I want to get over there as fast as possible so I can learn. Because as soon as you get to the kennel, you get slotted for your basic handler course and your advanced course. And in that time, they're making dog selections, you know? So they want to get you over there just as quick as they can too. But 175 always did a really good job of the new guys before they went to the course, the basic course. We got their hands on dogs. We got, if we saw any like hesitancy with dogs, we made sure that was stamped out prior to them going to a basic handlers course, which at the time we were going to VLK.
Okay.
And
that's where you did your basic handlers.
Yeah, that's where I did my basic handlers course.
How long is that school?
4 or 6 weeks long, something like that.
Okay. I mean, it's got to be fairly basic.
Yeah. But you're in there with only special operations guys. Because they put on the specific class for you guys. And you only get specific, like we only got a specific trainer for that class.
Who's in this class? Is it just Ranger guys?
No, so it's a mix. I mean, there were SF guys in there, SEAL guys, some upper level unit guys.
So it's basic, but it's definitely more catered towards you guys.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
it's
good.
catered towards the skill level of the clientele, I guess.
Sure.
Students.
And I'm sure, I think you would agree with me, but there's a big difference between an MP working a dog at a sentry post or whatever, checking IDs on base, and an SF dog.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
MP dogs usually at the station. But, like, we kind of got catered to, which is the beauty of being in special operations. You get catered to a little bit.
So 4 to 6 weeks at Von Lick Kennels. Tell it, like, what'd you learn there?
Really, like, the first couple of days you do like your health checks on the dogs. You learn how to do your health checks. You learn,
Are you assigned your dog at that point, or you go over there with no dog?
So you go with no dog initially. But your whole first day there, you're getting like your basic medical class and all that stuff where you're talking to a vet and they're instructing you on how to do basic trauma care for a dog, all of your routine checks that you should be doing as a handler. And while that's going on and you're getting that class, your leadership is going and doing dog selection.
Where were you guys getting your dogs from?
I mean, all over, but mainly it was Von Lick at the time, importing however many dogs they imported at any given time.
Right.
And then they have a selection ready for us.
Sure. Now, some of these dogs are also getting cycled down, like they've already got deployments, and rookie handlers might take on an experienced dog.
Yeah, like dogs back at battalion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at battalion, when you come back and you're a handler after your basic course, we tried to give new guys senior dogs because it's less of a hassle for a new guy. Like your first time wearing kit, wearing a hip lead, carrying your gat, like running around trying to be a dog handler, it's an absolute shit show. There's no other way of getting around it. Everyone's first time handling, whether it's in training or operationally, is absolute trash. Because you're figuring it out. right? But we try to, as much as possible, give young guys new dog or old dogs, senior dogs, and then the old dudes, the old handlers, they get the newer dogs that they can kind of
Build
have
'em up.
input on trading, build them up.
Yeah.
And then when we go to rotate dogs out and retire them out or whatever, those then young dogs are now ready, you know?
Right.
They're operationally ready. They're never finished, but they're ready.
And there's pros and cons to that. I mean, I definitely like that idea. I like that theory. It's less things to go wrong, but there are some drawbacks too to handling a brand new rookie handler, a seasoned dog.
Yes. Because that dog, if the dog is strong, the dog will walk right over that dude. And then you got a real fucking problem.
So tell us about your first dog.
Oh, man. So my first dog, I actually didn't get from Von Lick. I handled a different dog. I worked 2 dogs at Von Lick, both of which went to different units. Went to our advanced course, and then I got my dog. I met him day 1 there.
Okay, so you could go through basic with just any dog, dog. They'll give you something to work on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the leadership will make their selections for dogs. That class gets those dogs respectively for their units, but I may be handling a 375 dog as a 175 handler.
I got you.
Which
is good for the dogs too to get familiar with working with different people.
Yeah, absolutely. The mistake dudes make is they get attached to that dog, and they're like, "Oh, my dog." It's like, yo, don't get attached to him.
Yeah, you never know.
But anyway, so I get to my advanced course and I meet my dog that day, and I remember I was like walking up to the house, the training area, and I see this like monster Goliath of a dog, like in a run, losing his mind. I was like, damn, I wonder whose dog that is. I'm like, dude,
who's gonna get that one?
I get in there, and I know the civilian trainer there too. His name's Royal. But anyway, I go over to Royal and I'm talking to him. I'm like, yo, dude, whose monster is that out there? He goes, oh, haha, yours. And I was like, no, seriously, like whose monster is that? Whose dog is that? He goes, yours. I was like, what? So he's like, yeah, that's your dog. That's Rico. That's your dog. And I was like, okay, cool. In my head, I'm kind of excited because he's a monster. Like he looks cool as hell. And I was too excited to think about all the drawbacks to that. But anyway,
and describe to us what's Rico look like.
So Rico, at this time when I met him, I think he was just under a year and a half old, or maybe about a year and a half old. He's a Mastiff Malinois cross. You can definitely tell he's got Malinois in him, but he's massive. He has a head on him like that.
How much did he weigh? About
106 pounds.
Yeah.
But he was ribby. Like you could see his ribs a little bit in the back. So he had some room to grow. Dude, I just remember his paws were massive. I got a picture of him. I'll show it to you. We get there and like they tell us, you know, hey, this is how training's gonna go. Go meet your dogs. So everybody, some of the other battalion's handlers, like they had their dogs from VLK and they'd been working with them for a while. And I'm walking up to Rico and like Rico's just looking me dead in my soul and he's just silent. I'm like, that is a big ass dog. Initially, I thought it was great. He let me come in his kennel, like let me love on him a little bit and like let me feed him, let me walk him around. Because there's just this initial bonding period that we do at the beginning of the course. Like, hey, just like take your dog out, brush your dog, hang out with him for a bit. So you're just not this like new dick. But anyway, we get going into the course and I'm figuring it out with him. We're jiving real well. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like he's heavy. That sucks. I can't just pick him up and throw him over a wall. But I'm like, I don't care about that. He's a big ass dog. Bite work was phenomenal. His nose was phenomenal. And I was like, you know what? He's big, he's heavy, he drinks a lot of water, whatever. I'll suffer as a handler because I carry all of his shit. I'll suffer as a handler, but I got a cool dog, right? And I'm figuring it out with him. Well, we come to fast roping day.
Oof.
Yeah. And I remember I was getting him out of the kennel trailer, and they were like, "Hey, muzzle your dogs up because you got to have a dog muzzled in the bird." And I went to go throw his muzzle on. I didn't even think about it. I went to go throw his muzzle on and he like balked. And I was like, that's weird. And I was like, hey, Royal, like, has he had a muzzle on? He goes, nope, I don't think so. And I was like, what? So yeah, I don't think he's ever had a muzzle on, or maybe once. He's like, he should be fine though. And I was like, okay. So I'm like trying to get the muzzle on him, and he's like balking, and then he's just like, I stopped and he stopped, and he just like gave me one of these, you know. So I went and tried it again. Whack.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time he like tagged me. Like,
How many weeks into training are you at this point?
2 weeks.
Yeah. And it's no offense, but I mean, you did your 4 to 6 week basic. You still don't really know
Oh,
what the hell
dude,
you're
I don't
doing.
know anything.
And now you're 2 weeks in with this dog, and
Yeah.
you're going to be fast roping.
Yeah.
2 weeks in, let's
Yeah.
go.
I think I know a lot.
Yeah.
And, like, luckily, you kind of get taught how to learn from the fire hose, so it's nothing new. But you do the best with the information you get. But at the end of the day, I was just rangering through.
And today's fast rope day, it's not like we can spend 2 weeks to get the dog used to the muzzle. It's like, put the muzzle on, let's go.
Yeah. And he tagged me, and I like looked over at Royal. He's like, hey, you get the muzzle on yet? And I'm like, I'm going to. And then immediately I was just like, wham, wham, get it over him. And like, he's like pissed about it.
Yeah.
But I get it on and I get it tight. I go to check it, go to pull it over his ears, and he's like growling at me, trying to bite me through the muzzle. Get the leash on him, and we're off. I was like, fuck it. I'm like, we'll train it a different day. Get through fast roping, no issue. And then I didn't have to put a muzzle on him the rest of the course. We just did scenario-based training. And he did phenomenal. No conflict whatsoever. I finish up my course. We all go back to our respective battalions.
How long is this advanced training?
I think it's like 3.5 weeks, maybe 4 weeks.
Still really, really tight timelines.
Yeah. But like, we're trying to make operational handlers. Like,
Yeah.
right. But anyway, I get back to battalion. I'm bringing Rico home with me. Get him in the kennel environment. It's obviously stressful. There's like 17 other dogs in there. They're all losing their shit. So he's already like, yo, what is this? Get him in there, no issue whatsoever. Go back the next morning, take him out, no issue. I'm like, cool. And then I try to approach muzzle training one day. And I go get him out, and I'm like out in the OB yard with him. And I had the muzzle, and I was like holding it out to him, and I'm throwing food in it. Nothing. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I'll talk to May about it at the end of the day today, and May will know. And I forgot to talk to May. Well, the next day I had to go take him to the vet because he's getting pexied, because all of our dogs get pexied.
This is some type of immunization?
No, so gastropexy, they tack their stomach wall to the side wall of their body so that
no bloat.
No bloat.
That's interesting that they do that.
Yeah.
I guess because of the type of missions you guys are doing, up in the bird and all that.
Yeah.
That's
and really,
very,
it's like
very
precaution because, like, I mean, it can still happen, but just a huge deterrence against it.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
This is pretty major surgery. I mean, they gotta put him out.
Yeah, they got to put him out. And what the cool part of it is shitty, but it's cool. Like, yes, he gets put out, but like I get to kind of like help and observe the surgery to kind of, because it's medical training for me. With my
Yeah, you get to
dogs.
see the inside.
Yeah, like they let me put the IV in and stuff like that because
That's
it's
neat.
valuable training for me. But anyway, he gets his surgery, and then I learned he comes out of anesthesia like a rocket.
Did you skip, by the way, you had to put a muzzle on him to get him to go to the vet?
So I leash wrapped muzzled him.
Okay.
And then they just
You're like, hey, I'm not
dexed
going to
him in
deal
the
with it
butt.
right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, I mean, he was still trying to bite me,
Right.
you know? But I was, at this point, I'm like, oh, that's Rico. Like,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. And he's not the only one that's probably like that. There's a couple.
Yeah.
of
No,
assholes,
there's a
I'm
couple
sure.
hot ones that, like, you just know you take a little bit of a risk when you touch them, which oddly enough was my second dog that I worked. He was the same way, kind of, but he was at least predictable. But anyway, you know, Rico gets pexied. I get him back. He's super lethargic, out of anesthesia, trying to bite me and stuff. Like, totally fine with it. I was like, yeah, dude, you're under anesthesia. I'd try to bite me too, right? But then he gets to where like Cone is gone and all this stuff. He's still kind of recovering because he like tore his stitches or something like that. So we had to take him back. But he's getting back to where he's like eating a lot of food. He's gaining his weight back. He's moving around quicker. But a switch flipped in that dog. I went to go break him out of the kennel one day and he like met me through the door, attached himself to my arm, my chest, my leg. This dude was just trying to eat me alive. Luckily, I was able to like somehow like get my leash on him, choke him out, hang him, slam the door, pull the leash through, and then get it undone. And I was like, yo, what was that? I'm like ghost white, bleeding. I go into my trainer. I was like, yo, Rico just like came after me. He's like, well, he'll come out of it. And I was like, okay. And they gave me this dog because I was a strong handler. Like I was not like I was a good handler, but like I was competent, right? Day 2, same thing. Day 3, same thing.
Was it only in the kennel?
No, this was coming out of the kennel. Walking, he would do fine. He would walk, he'd like look at me and just kind of like googly eye me for a little bit. But eventually, like we'd get to the outdoor run and like right at that threshold, he'd go in, turn around, and it's on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd actually, like as silently as I could, and made sure nobody else was out there.
Unhook.
Yeah, I would unhook him because he'd walk right into the kennel.
So you could just...
I could start getting the door closed as he was flipping around.
Yeah.
But it got to where like catch pole. Like that's how we had to get this dog. Wow. And dude, I was getting eaten up like one after the other. And I was one of the few people that could do anything with him. It's a pain in the ass to even break him. And I remember like there was another handler that was like on the break schedule that day. And he calls me at like 9 a.m. He's like, yo, dude, you got to come get your dog. And I was like, what? I was like, just put the catch pole on him, take him out. He's like, no, bro. Like, come get your dog. He busted his stitches. He's bleeding. He's going to eat me and the other guy here. We're not going to jack with him. You come handle him. He's your dog. And I was like, man. So now I'm shackled to this thing.
Yeah. Can't even take a day off or whatever. Yeah.
And then he finally got better. And I thought we were kind of on the mend with our relationship. Like we had been working some problems together. And then I hadn't been bit up in a little while. And I was like, okay, cool. Maybe and him and I had gotten in a couple tussles where I moved him around. He moved me around. And I was like, okay, we're getting a mutual respect for each other. But then one day, dude, I got it good. Like grabbed me by the hand, like opened up a good hole in my hand, came up my arm. And the big thing that stuck out to me was he did all that. And then it's not like he then turned around and walked away. He was coming back. Right. So that's like true handler aggression. And in our unit, we don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And I don't need to be worrying about that when I'm supposed to be out on a mission with my dog.
Yeah.
Whether or not he's going to eat me or out his ball, you know?
Right.
And anytime you would eat him, he'd just go through the roof, bro. It was
Just
so
got
much worse. Yeah. And as a young handler, you don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Like,
looking back, do you think, you know, were there missteps or was it just he was going to be like that no matter what? Combination? Is he just...
I think...
I'm making the assumption this dog got washed.
Yeah, we washed him.
Right.
There were probably some missteps on my part. Like I was a young handler. I probably didn't know what to look for. I probably could have saw some signs and maybe input some corrective action there. But also at the same time, that's just kind of how Rico was. Like Rico was a big independent dog. Mm-hmm. He was what we looked for.
Yeah.
So I can't really blame him for being big and strong and independent.
Yeah.
You know?
It's what we call like a true alpha dog. Like just will never bow down to anybody.
Yeah. And
we get them in police work and...
Well, I remember Justin telling me, actually his dog Zeke, that lion that he has of a German Shepherd, like that dog can't be around people, you know, like he's a hunter and that's it.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of dogs that we get sometimes. And
but your training tempo too, like it's not like you had 6 months to make friends with this dog.
No.
It literally is, hey, week 2, we're putting a muzzle on, let's go.
Yeah.
That might have been the beginning of the downward spiral. But it probably, who knows? Maybe it was too much too soon.
Yeah.
Or had you waited 4 to 6 months, you still would have ran into the same problem. The day came that you had to muzzle him or whatever. But yeah, I guess he didn't like getting manhandled or getting muzzles put on him.
And like, now that I think back to that, I think you're probably right. It was that first initial conflict over the muzzle where I was like, you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And like,
it was downward spiral for me.
Yeah. That was probably the jump off point.
Yeah. But hey,
yeah,
it happens.
It does.
So if he gets washed, then, at what point is he washed?
So it was the pretty much the last day he decided that he was going to eat me alive. I got it pretty good. Like I said, I opened my hand up and stuff. I was bleeding everywhere. May saw that he was trying to come back, and I actually, after he bit me, I had to go take him and put him up. He walked right into the kennel with me. But I put the dog up and I was pissed. I was mad. Because, like, this job I wanted to do that I was so excited to do just sucks. And, like, I was ready to be done. I was like, fuck this. I'm going back to the line. So I went in there to May. I was like, May, like, I'm done, man.
I mean, you've been bit how many times at this point?
I know it was past 10.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And not just little little bitch bites. You're getting torn up.
Yeah. Like, he means it.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, May, I'm done. Find me a different dog or I'm leaving. Anyway, he puts me on another dog and he's like, hey, yeah, got you. Totally understand. We're going to wash Rico. We'll get you on K, which was my second dog. I worked him for about 2 weeks.
And what?
Same thing. Yeah. So May felt really good after that. He's like, yeah, I give you a handler aggressive dog. And then I give you another handler aggressive dog. That's at least predictable, but you just got to learn.
Did Kay have any deployments?
Yeah. Kay had a few deployments at this point.
Okay. So, I mean, he was more proven.
Yes.
Yeah.
More proven.
Just, I don't know what's up with these vendors, but they're like, yeah, that's a Ranger dog. That's a Ranger dog. Oh, he's a nasty son of a bitch. All right, Ranger dog.
Yeah.
They must know you guys can handle it, Which, like you said, it's what you need.
Yeah.
To a point.
Yeah, to a point.
Dang.
And they put me on K. And initially, that first week, I was fine. Like,
and K is a Malinois?
K is a Malinois, yeah. So actually, what's funny is I have a picture of Rico and K next to each other.
Oh, like big size difference?
Oh, yeah. But
what's K like? How much did he?
Dude, he's like 40, 45 pounds.
Wow,
it's like
little pocket rocket, yeah,
like that.
That's the way, man.
We called him the Coyote because he just looked like we picked him up out of the woods,
like a little malnourished.
Yeah, like a little coyote. And we always would give his handler, his name's Nick Vasily. We would give his handler shit because they could only talk to each other for some reason. It's like we would always give Nick shit. We're like, oh, you speak coyote. Yeah, that's why he respects you.
Nick was his first handler?
Yeah, and then Nick got out, and then he became a spare dog.
Okay.
So they put me on K, and first week, like I said, we're good, we're driving. Second week, I'm running a detection problem with K, and I remember somebody had told me it, but I was like trying to remember the whole routine of like getting him to out, because there's like an in-depth routine.
Just for K?
Just for K, with getting him to out. Unless you're my other buddy Max, which for some reason Kay just respected Max. I don't know why. But I jacked up the routine. He grabbed my hand. I reacted, set the bite, and then lifted Kay up in the air and was trying to kick him off me.
While you're still getting bit?
While I'm still getting bit. And
that's ridiculous.
there's a couple other handlers there like watching it, like laughing at me. And I'm like, fuck, man. Like, I just got done with this.
Yeah.
And I'd had enough at that point. I was like, I need a different dog. I'm not learning how to handle. I'm just fighting these dogs. Yeah. So then I get put on Sim, which is my dog that retired with me.
Okay.
Sim had probably 4 handlers at this point. He had been taken on multiple deployments. He was a pretty seasoned senior dog.
Malinois also.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, 50, 55 pounds. He's we used to call him the tunnel rat because he's like that big. Mm-hmm. And like part pit bull or some shit.
Sure.
But anyway, they put me on him. He's super neutral. Like, immediately push button. Like, I can do anything with him. He's allowing me to learn, right? I did jack up with him a couple times, and he let me know. But that's all it was. He would let me know when I jacked up. And then I got a chance to fix it and get better. He actually allowed me to do my job.
Are you set back at all from your other guys because you're starting over with a new dog, or you're still progressing through the training?
I'm still progressing because I had great mentors. I had like my very good friend to this day, John Alston. That dude is an excellent handler. Excellent. He's a tactician. The dude is like, I was like, I want to handle like that. He can do everything with a dog and with his guns. So I had him mentoring me. I had our senior handler, Kyle, mentoring me. And those two dudes were like the best. So I was still progressing, but I just had to get my hands on more dogs, you know, a dog that would allow me to progress. So I finally got that. And then I got up to snuff real quick, where like it sounds egotistical, but I'm very confident in my ability of what I can do, to where I was surpassing handlers that had been there for a little bit, just because it's always a competition.
What's your main mission with a dog?
So main task with the dog is to locate, confirm or deny the presence of in-place explosive devices, first and foremost, so safety and security of the strike force.
So all of those dogs are EOD dogs?
Yes.
Explosive detection dogs?
Yes.
Okay.
Later on in my supervisory role, like we had played with some programs. We were trying to, start up different stuff, because you're always trying to look and modernize, right? Principles remain the same, but methodology changes over time. That's what we were trying to do. But all those dogs are bomb detection dogs and apprehension dogs.
Any tracking?
Yeah. Oh, we did tracking too. I'm not a tracking guy. I hate tracking, like with a passion. Sim's a great tracking dog though, so it was always fun with him.
So you get trained up on all these tasks. You're proficient in explosive detection, apprehension work, tracking. I mean, that's probably your bread and butter, those three?
Yep, those three. Really, the detection work is where we have to be good. You have to be good at reading the dog.
Yeah. What are you guys using, 30-foot lines?
Combination.
Off leash too?
Right tool for the job, yeah. If we can be off leash, we'll be off leash. Mm-hmm. If, the situation dictates that I'm on a 30-foot line or 15 or 10, I always carried multiple sets of lines on me because I always want tools. Yeah. I want redundancies. If for some reason my dog turns around, bites my 10-footer in half, well, at least I got a 15. But right tool for the job. And we pay a lot of attention to detection work, reading the dog, the subtle changes.
What was their final alert? Sit, down?
Final response was usually a sit or a down.
Okay.
More often than not, the dogs just sat and stared.
Yeah.
But which in later stages, after, especially when I was training under Justin, and like I got to train with Cameron Ford for a little bit, came to Justin's and put on a seminar. It kind of opened my eyes to this. I was like, he's like, why do you train a final response? And we're like, because we need the dog to tell us. And we're like, well, as a handler, you're just looking for an atypical physiological change in the dog that alerts you to the presence of target odor, right? I'm like, yeah. Like, because we were training this pointer at the time for detection of human beings as an early alert dog. And we were correcting the dog when it was pointing.
Which is its natural
genetic thing.
And I'm sorry, you're training this pointer for like missing persons?
Early alert dogs.
I don't know. I've never heard that term.
We were trying to modernize something. I can't say the name of the specific program.
Okay.
But in the early stages of the Vietnam War, there were these things called scout dogs.
Okay. We're
Like,
tracking, yeah.
They would take these dogs from the pound, make them early alert warning systems for the patrols out in the jungle.
Let you know when you're 100, 200, 300 yards out.
Exactly, right? So we were attempting to kind of mirror that and make it modern so that the dogs were tracking dogs. They were early alert dogs. They were imprinted on explosive detection, which now looking back at it, like it wouldn't have really worked out. But we were correcting the dog as it was pointing.
Yeah, which is what.
And like,
yeah.
Now I'm like, why the fuck were we correcting a genetic thing?
Yeah.
Why? Because we want to sit.
Trying to force it to sit. Yeah.
But
and pointing might have even been even more specific, more like he's pointing right at it.
Yeah, like it's over there.
Yeah.
Right. Which we're idiots. That's why humans just suck and dogs are way cooler. Because humans are usually wrong the first time. But yeah, so I get to where I can read my dog and I'm proficient. And when I say proficient as a young handler, like I know enough to get me by.
Yeah, I would say, considering the timelines you all were working with.
Yeah. I can get the job done. It may not be pretty, but I can get the job done.
Sure.
Right. And we're doing a bunch of training, scenario-based training. And then my first deployment with Sim was extremely uneventful. A certain world event happened that caused me to go to a country unexpectedly. And basically, it was this revolving door of get ready, stand down, get ready, stand down, get ready, get real ready, stand down, right? But during that whole time, we're still training in country. We're still doing all the things we need to do in order to be mission capable. In which getting your dog acclimatized on all of the foreign odor and then ready to roll in a very short time span is difficult, right? But that's what we had to do. My second deployment with Sim was better.
More kinetic.
Yeah. I learned a lot more. It was eye-opening. That's all I can kind of say about that.
That's all you can say about that.
Yeah. But what's really awesome is like during that deployment, you know, I'm not the only one deployed. There were other handlers deployed too, and I want to tell this story because he won't. John Alston, by all rights, should not be alive on this earth today, and his dog Woody is a legend in and of himself. They're actioning this target, and Alston takes a frag grenade, like at close range. He's clearing this landing zone with the dog off leash, and like Woody's an excellent dog. He works better off leash than he does on leash. Clearing this landing zone with this dog, and all of a sudden here come three bad guys, and without skipping a beat, like does his job. And all of a sudden a grenade goes off. He takes frag right to his carotid artery. The only thing he can do is put his hand to his neck, gather his dog up, and then walks 150 meters over to wherever the medics were. And it's like, I'm hit, and collapses. And like, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into that story, but like, it's incredible. And then I was on a target with a dog. His dog's name was Iris. And this is actually before I was in canine. I was a team leader at this point. We're on this target. We walk in and, you know, stuff's going on throughout the night, and we reach a boring point, but all of a sudden we get a call like, hey, squirter chase, meaning that we see some people running, go get them, right? Naturally, canine's always going on that, which is a totally another conversation that I would love to have about like realistic training, right? But anyway, so I'm arguing with my squad leader because I'm just on a blocking position. I'm an alpha team leader not being used. I was like, send me. Like, let me go. Let me take my team and I'll go over there. He's like, no, I'm going. I'm like, no, please let me go. Push comes to shove. I get told to sit my ass where I'm at. They go off to go get this squirter, and explosion happens. I go running over there because we got called to go get them and clear the area. We run up. Dog is deceased. Handler's hit bad, which at the time was Kyle and like one of my mentors. My tab is hurt. My squad leader's hurt. My Bravo team leader's hurt. But that dude was a hoss. He was like bleeding on a knee, bandaging himself, holding a gun. Like, the dude's a hoss.
What were they hit with?
Like a grenade, like right at their feet. But Iris saved them. So Iris was off leash. She actually found the dude. She was trying to get down into the ditch to get him and to bite him. And she couldn't find a way in there. Well, that gave this dude time to stand up and just lob one. Well, luckily she's a super prey heavy dog, and she chased that grenade like it was a ball. And she got to the grenade and she stood over the top of it. Grenade goes off. She absorbs a good amount of the blast, but the grenade lands next to Kyle's feet, right? Like literally right next to him. She eats all the blast. He gets hit. Everybody gets peppered. But if Iris hadn't been there, Kyle would be dead.
Mm.
You know? The blast doesn't even kill her initially. She eats it. She kind of like falls down, gets up, walks over to Kyle, collapses. And that was another moment in my career where I was like, yeah, I need to go to canine. Right? One, they're always involved in the bad shit. And two, like, that dog was just doing what it was supposed to be doing, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent, but like willfully just did that. Right? Yeah. And people will say, oh, yeah, well, that shit, dog willfully chased a grenade. Good job. But yeah, if that dog didn't do that, then Kyle would be dead.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Those dudes won't tell those stories. And I feel like that's kind of my job to do that. Because if you're going to be anything in a profession, you need to be a historian of it too. And if I can tell their stories, then I will, you know. But we get back from that deployment, me and Sim, a lot of good work. I learned how to break stick a dog after that deployment. So that was pretty cool. Which a break stick is like way too much of help. You get dependent on that thing.
Yeah.
You do have to know how to physically take your dog off. Because I got dependent on it, and then it took me like a little bit to get my dog off of something one time, and I was just getting shit on for it. Like, it was bad.
Can you describe for the folks at home, you know, what a break stick is,
Yeah.
why it is that
So
you need it? We're using it in law enforcement now. I mean, I don't know how long it's been in law enforcement. I'd say,
how do you feel about break sticks? Because I know Justin feels a certain way about them.
well, my personal opinion, I've never used one. Don't ever feel the need to use one. I think it's just one more tool that if you get dependent on, and it's inevitable, man. What is it? Murphy's Law. You're gonna have blood on your hands. It's gonna be yelling, screaming, dark out, and you pull your break stick out, and then you drop it who knows where, and it's in the grass, and you can't find it. You can't use it. And how to get your dog off, and the clock's ticking. And especially in law enforcement, we say, you know, every time you tell your dog to let go and it doesn't, it's another $10,000 added to the lawsuit. So we need the dog off. We need it off now. So we teach a tactical removal that guarantee you get any dog off in 3 seconds or less, without the need for a break stick. But it's if it works, great. But that's my thought on the break stick. If it works, better than not having it, I guess. But,
Yeah. Rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
But while we're deep into it, tell the folks at home what a break stick is.
So break stick is simply a stick that or a flat metal piece that you can insert into the dog's mouth, flip it a certain way, and then push it to the back of their mouth, and essentially gags them off of an engagement.
It's a very quick way to get a dog to let go
way.
of, and typically you would use that on when a dog is biting someone.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if I've ever seen someone use a break stick on getting a dog to out a toy, though I guess you could. But it's to my point. It's another level. When it comes to the point that you need to use a break stick to get a dog to let go, they are, and there's so many ways to probably describe it, but they are in another world, man. Their eyes are rolled in the back of their head, and they are
invested.
That's the way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've seen people use break sticks the wrong way too. It's kind of probably a bad label of the tool. I think break sticks, I am no historian on this, but I think they use them a bit in dog fighting world.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where it originated.
Could be, yeah. And we're talking about pit bulls or bully type breeds or whatever it is that won't let go of another dog. Yeah. And I've seen them use like wedges, almost like a doorstop. And they're putting it where the dog's molars are and twisting it to pry the dog's mouth open, but that's not the proper way to use it. If I were to name it anything, I'd name it a gag stick.
Yeah, it's a gag stick.
It's just any kind of device that you can slip down into the dog's throat and initiate a gag reflex. And when done properly, I mean, it can get a dog to let go in just a few seconds. If there's a window there. And same thing, man. It's one last place that I want to be putting my hand, because you got to get in there. You got to get close enough.
Exactly.
It's the last place I really want to be putting my hands. But I think there's a lot of, even if you do it right, there's the potential that the dog re-engages the wrong thing, maybe clacks down on the gag stick, which are usually made out of metal.
Yeah.
They come in all different shapes and sizes, but we started using them in our unit towards the end of my career there. And I know they're still using them. Now you see them a lot. You see them a lot in a lot of these more recent police videos, police canine videos that are coming out, body cams and stuff. Again, I got nothing against it.
Yeah.
If it works, great. But I guess you got seasoned with it.
Yeah. And I got too dependent on it, right? Because it was the easy button. I'm like,
Yeah.
it was out.
And this is my favorite part of the conversation. We've probably been building up to this for a minute, and maybe not to get too technical, but it's like, your dog was biting you? Yeah. These are high horsepower animals, man. This is not a fucking pet.
Yeah.
These are monsters. And it's
total.
what you need. Because in your case, when grenades are going off, and people are getting blown up, we don't need a dog to hesitate to handle business with a guy that's armed, in your case, with an AK-47 or strapped with who knows what. And so we will take a dog like that has a little too much horsepower. And they might say, like, well, what do you mean? You can't get the dog to just let go? There's no special command you tell it to let go? I'm sure your dog had an out command.
Yeah, it did.
Do you want to explain to the folks at home why, even though your dog was trained with an out command, why it won't let go?
Yeah, so you can have a verbal out all you want. That verbal out is contextual to the arousal level of the dog in the given situation, right? In training with me and Sim, like I could laser Sim to a bite all day long, verbally out him, get him off. We were fine. In real life, when the dog is in that state and they're getting that level of satisfaction, which is genetically what they want to do, their Malinois are built to bite, right? Like that dog is in such adrenaline dump and just fixation, auditory exclusion, that your words mean nothing to them.
If they even hear you.
If they hear you.
And even if they do hear you, they're like, I'll be with you in a minute, Dad.
They might give you a big old furry finger and like, that'll be that, you know? So yeah, we do have words to get the dog to out. Do they always work? No. Right? Like much like human beings, you know, we enter points of stress. And this is a big thing that I do with law enforcement guys is like, I put them in stress. And then I ask, like, I will make them pay attention to things as we're going through the scenario. And I want to see what they retain. I want to see if they can pull themselves out of this stressful state, observe their environment, how they can interact with it, and manipulate it to influence the end state, right? But we get in these states of stress where like we don't hear anything, we don't feel anything, right? Like if you've been in a bar fight, you know you don't feel the bar fight till you're at home that night or in jail, right? Like it's a natural reaction, and it's strong in dogs when they receive high levels of satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I think there's definitely a way to train a dog to out no matter what.
yeah.
But there's sometimes a price to pay for that. We have a dog that's a little too handler sensitive. Yeah, in a perfect world, we have a beautifully balanced dog that will bite when you tell it to bite with 110% and out in a split second.
Yeah.
But this is like a magical unicorn that we're chasing. I mean, it only takes one rep, one direction or the other to fuck up that perfect balance. So I always say we're striving for dogs to be in balance, but literally once you get a dog in perfect balance, the very next rep you do will throw them off balance. What's that next rep? Too hard of an out, too high of a stem, maybe a failed out.
Yeah.
Maybe too much intensity on the bite, whatever it is, but it's going to throw your dog off either way. So that being said, the guys that have been in the shit much would rather have a dog that doesn't out maybe the first time as opposed to a dog that's a little hesitant to engage or a little quick to out,
Yeah.
a little too handler sensitive, anticipating the out, anticipating the stem, etc. So anyways, I just always find that interesting. We get into discussions, whether it's with civilians who are trying to understand what it is, or even better, handlers, and this is in big quotes now, handlers who are like, all their experiences on the training field, and they don't know, they don't understand.
Yeah.
So I got into some shit some months ago where I said that most police canine handlers can only get about less than 30-something% reliability with their dogs when their dog's under stress, or whatever words I use, but under a certain level of arousal, whatever words you want to throw in. But that the higher that motor goes, the higher that arousal is, the lower your chances of that dog listening gets, no matter how much training you do. And that's what we're striving for, so that we can have a dog that is at 100 miles an hour, but can still turn on a dime, out on a dime. And that's what we're striving for. But on our journey there will be made mistakes. And then I got into some shit for that, saying like that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, and then come to find out when I spoke to the guy who said, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I said, hey, how many street bites you had? Big old fucking goose egg.
Yeah.
So I'm like, don't equate
Yeah.
what you're doing on the training field with real life. So anyways, and it's never to bash our profession. It's just the fucking truth, man. It's just the truth. It's just how it goes. And
sometimes the truth hurts.
yeah. And all we can do is try to improve on it. But hey, and then you'll have guys out there who don't want that level of control. They feel that once you get that level of control, that you're risking a dog to be too handler sensitive, a little too robotic, not independent enough. And that, so some more hardened veterans, speaking from the law enforcement realm, they prefer a dog with a little too much horsepower and not enough brakes. Yeah. And I've talked about it before, but anytime I get an opportunity to talk about it, I like talking about it. That, in a perfect world, we have a perfect dog that's like a fucking robot.
Yeah.
But realistically, you're not ever going to have that perfect balance. So we tend to cheat on the side of a dog that maybe doesn't listen that well, but will fuck someone up without being told to.
Without hesitation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, that's where I lean. I like a little bit of an edge. I don't want to deal with aggression ever again. I don't want to be eaten time and time. But bro, you can check me. I'm fine with that. I get it. Do what I want you to do.
Yeah. And if I got to use a brake stick to make
if I gotta break you off, then gotcha. Yeah. But fundamentally, as a handler, you should know how to physically get your dog off.
Especially if it bites you.
Yes.
Or let me ask you this. And if you've been able to talk about it, but do you guys get a lot of accidental bites on fellow Rangers?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the dog's not always going to be perfect, right? Dogs can't target discriminate like people can. Mm-hmm. When I line the dog up and I point him in a direction, and I tell you, don't go in front of the dog. And I send said dog, and you don't listen to me, and he meets you in the night, and you get bit, that's your fault. Mm-hmm. Like, I sent him to go do a job, and the last command was stell him or find him, which ultimately means find him and bite him. Yeah. Right? And if you get in between that and he finds you, he's going to do the job that he thought he was supposed to do. Right. But we don't punish them for that. At least I didn't, right? Mainly because the Rangers do a really good job of like acting out the bite because they scream, right? Like girls.
They take it as a training opportunity.
Yeah, we take it as a training opportunity. We out the dog and then we send him again. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to sit there and punish the dog for biting when I told him to bite. Right. You know? Right. Was it the wrong guy? Yeah. Well, be tough. You know? You're not going to die from a dog bite. I mean, you could, but
I got you. Yeah.
Not likely.
Yeah.
Right. Be tough. Move on.
Yeah. So I ask because I find it very interesting, the crossover, the similarities.
Yeah. It's pretty similar. We get accidental bites. We get, Sim would check people sometimes.
Little bitch bites.
Yeah. Like when I was in Iraq, with him, we were standing huddled together in this bunker because there was a whole like missile thing. But we're standing there and like Sim has certain aversions to people. that he just doesn't trust. Okay, he has a certain picture of what that person looks like, and if that picture presents itself, he's going to try and bite you, right? So I was standing there with my back to a bunch of people, and like I was talking to somebody, and I had Sim on a hip lead, and I just remember as I'm sitting there having this conversation, I just feel the leash go like gets tight, and I'm like, oh shit, and I turn around, and he's about that close from grabbing this dude. And like my instinctual reaction was to grab him like right behind his ears and turn him away.
Yeah.
Which then turned him into my forearm. And like I got checked a little bit, whatever. I just threw him down and I was like, nah, nay, Eagle. Because it's like an interpreter or some civilian or something. But that's the kind of dog he was. He's going to have my back. And if you walk up looking shifty, like he's going to bite you.
Yeah.
Right? Got him down, de-escalated the situation because this dude was freaked out. Right.
But he didn't even get bit though.
No, he didn't even get bit. Like, I don't know why you're sitting there crying about it. Right. But got it de-escalated. And then like every dude I walk past with him after that, it's just like
Giving you a wide berth.
Check.
Oh, really?
No, yeah. He'll get him. Right. Like, and then for some reason I found out I was out one night and I'm like walking in by some dudes and he's got his muzzle on. And I like stopped to do something like with my kid or something like that, and he just punches a dude, and I'm like, "What?" He's just like muzzle punching him, like he's trying to kill him.
Yeah.
You know, I called his prior handler, John Alston. I was like, "Yo, dude, like, why does this dog muzzle punch everybody? Like, how do I train this out?" He's like, "Oh, my bad." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, no, I did that with him when I was handling him." It's like every guy I would walk by that was a bad dude, like ISIS guys, like we just muzzle punch the shit out of him, right? I probably shouldn't say that, but I'll say it anyway.
It happens.
Right?
Yeah.
It happens.
Nobody got hurt.
No.
A little training.
Yeah, and they probably fell into the dog, to be honest with you. But yeah, he just muzzle checked everybody. He'd check bite some people.
Yeah, be careful what you teach your dog,
Yeah.
I think is the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Because they'll take it to the 10th degree.
What you're willing to allow and what you're, gonna let happen.
Yeah, we had a dog in our unit named Pluto, who, when it first came to the unit, was soft. And everybody was making fun of the handler because his dog was so soft. And by soft, meaning like the dog was young, it was a shepherd, it was too friendly, they thought, too friendly.
Yeah.
And so what they would do is every time they passed by the vehicle, they'd sneak up on the vehicle and bang on it. Or every time they passed by the handler, they'd reach around and flank the dog or beat up on the handler because the handler is also a rookie. And they awakened the beast, Pluto, who was so nicely named as a sweet little, Disney character, became a fucking asshole of a dog. Hard-biting dickhead. And nobody could get near Pluto or his handler. So they took it to the 10th degree, like meaning we wanted the dog to be a little harder, a little more on edge. Yeah, be careful what you wish for. The dog became so on edge, nobody could get near the handler, which sounds great in theory, like, oh, we got a hard dog now. Yeah, the problem is when you go to back him up and he's running a 15-foot lead, you had to be 20-ish plus feet away from him. It's very hard to be right on his ass and be that backup officer. I volunteered, and no matter how many times I'd work with that dog, both in training or on actual deployments, man, I don't know how I'd get bit. Just quick reflexes, basically. But I was just trying to get that dog to at least accept me as part of that pack, and he never did. But it was always a danger to that handler because nobody could ever get close enough to him to back him up. So if he rounded a corner, he's rounding that corner on his own, which is not safe, not fair, not the right thing to do. So whatever that lesson to be learned there is, nowadays we want a dog that can integrate with the pack, isn't trying to nuke everybody. Accidents will still happen, but we need them to be a lot more social. We started specifically, we didn't even have this as an initial test, but a socialization test. We never had that when we were testing dogs. We just tested them for their drives and their courage and their bite work and some obedience. But then we started adding in an actual just can we pet the dog? Will he be social? Because we're trying to have best of both worlds now. And I'm happy we made that move. Right, wrong, or indifferent, but we can't have as badass of a dog as Pluto is. Pluto's a badass dog. There's consequences to having a dog that's a little too hard like that.
And like that's something that we strive to do. We strive to have neutral dogs and social dogs. We need them just social enough to like not bite everybody on the team, right? And to be able to, if we're stacked on a door, I can have the dog off leash, tell him go, or laze him in, and he's not going to try and just nuke everybody in the stack.
Yeah.
Right.
Or be on a helo with them, or
Yeah.
in close quarters.
Close quarters is the biggest thing. Is like, because if we get clearance to go off leash internal of a compound, I'm cutting my dog off, and then I'm clearing with the team, and I'm working the dog with my ears. I then become a team member, because the patterning that we do and the building search stuff that we do so much of it to such a high standard that like the dogs just, they go off the pattern and they operate. They find a gap and they go to it. And by doing that, a second order effect of that is they follow the team. They know exactly when we stack. They'll look over, we'll be stacked on a door. If you got a really good dog that's seasoned, you can put the dog in a position and like send him through ahead of the team. And that's how we like to run it. We like to run dogs one room ahead, and then handlers in trail behind the team or actively clearing.
Where would you be in the stack typically?
Typically, if there's 4 guys, if the team is full and there's 4 guys to the stack, I'm going to release the dog on the internal side of on the stack, and then I'm going to flow in last guy. So I'll be number 5.
Okay.
And it's this fine balance that you have to have as a handler, that like you need to be close enough to be employed, but out of the picture enough to not like gunk everything up, because handlers can gunk everything up. Like if you want to be too involved or you're up your dog's ass, like bro, when the dog's off leash and if your dog is trained well and you've worked together, he doesn't need you, right? Like he knows the job. You sent him to go do a job. He knows it. He doesn't need you. Don't be up his ass. So you make yourself employable. You flow with the team, or I would stay one room behind if there were 2 teams up there working, because then I can at least like listen for Sim. I can have a general idea where he is in the compound or the building or structure. I can recall him and direct him with a laser, or I can flow up to the team and direct him into something that's unknown before they go in it.
Right.
Because when we're clearing with dog, it's always before eagles, never before partner force, right? Mainly because the dog's a U.S. asset. But if my guys are going in there and it's unknown, I'm sending my dog in, right? That was the big thing with us. Barricaded shooters, stuff like that, where certain death is known for the dog, I'm not sending him in there. Unless we've exhausted all other options, and the only way that we can eliminate this barricaded subject is by sending brave men through the door, then yes, my dog will go first. Because then at least he's a battlefield stopwatch. He can move in a different direction than us and maybe take the attention away from this guy so we can effectively engage him. But at the end of the day, that's his job. He's a tool.
Yep.
Right? That's why they need to be social. They need to be able to switch gears like that. I need to be able to recall the dog, and then everybody can pet him, and then boom, I can go send him, he can go get a bite. Right? And then verbally out the dog, call him back, and then go into detection. Mm-hmm. If they have some edge on them, fine.
And that's very interesting, too, something that we wouldn't get too often in, say, a law enforcement realm. We do have EOD dogs, but I really can't think of a scenario, at least not on the regular, where 1 minute you're tracking a bad guy, the very next minute, maybe you're biting them, and then you're right into detection.
Yeah.
Where I'm assuming that's what's happening over there a lot.
Yeah.
Detection, back and forth and back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, we just. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I could see scenarios where you need to be bouncing between tracking, biting, back to obedience. Yes. Hey, now clear this room for explosives.
Yep. And like, as a canine handler on target, you're kind of everywhere all at once. You have multiple different tasks that you have to hit as the night progresses, right? You're doing the initial route clearance on your way in. Right, you're doing initial clearance of any high IED laden areas, right, where bad guys would put bombs to hurt people. You know, choke points around walls, corners, gates. So we're clearing all those areas initially, we're just confirming or denying, right? We don't make sure that it's like, we don't pinpoint. And then we need to be on call to either go internal and start clearing to like get the dog off to either find bomb or find guy, or we need to be ready to be called to a squirter chase, which may be at a different part of the mission, like a different geographical location. So that just goes back into like training realistically. And that's what I harp to these law enforcement guys is like, you have to train realistically to be able to switch gears like that, right? Like where you can get in a foot chase with your dog, with this guy who's hopping all these, you know, gates and shit like that. And then you can run all the way back to the car and then put the dog into detection and maybe seize something or something like that to further your case. I don't know if that's exactly how it works.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, article searches would be a big thing. Hey, we just went through this yard looking for the bad guy. Maybe you just got a bite. Can you switch gears and find the gun he tossed?
Exactly.
And most dogs wouldn't do very good at that, to be honest with you.
No, and
I would typically call in another dog, but
I would almost equate that to a handler thing. Like we train it all. Like Steve was always hard on us about that. He's like, you need to be able to transition the dog. I need to be able to go from squirter chase to bomb detection internal. Before we go clear secure inside, like courtyards and areas where we're going to put people have to be cleared by me first and then by EOD. And then, you know, we can start moving people in there. That's pivotal for the operation, like that those areas get cleared. So if I'm biting somebody, I need to be able to run my ass back here with my dog and clear all of this. And maybe I got to run out and bite somebody again.
Yeah, that's wild.
So transitioning the state of the dog is a key handler skill that you have to have.
So speaking on that, this is where we probably have some different experiences. I don't know of a law enforcement canine handler who's ever found a real bomb, which is good because we're all working stateside.
Yeah.
And if they found a bomb, then what the fuck?
Yeah.
Now we have to train for it and set up as realistic scenarios as we can. But I don't know of anyone that's ever actually alerted. Maybe alerted and it's a false alert or something, but actually like found a bomb. Again, maybe it's happened, but we're talking since 2001, since I've been doing it, like post 9/11. I just don't know. But we have dogs hitting on dope all day, every day, right? Yeah. Finding kilos and whatever. When you were overseas, did your dog did your dogs ever keyed on explosives?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like, to me, that's actually more fulfilling than the bite, right? Like biting one dude, like that one dude can maybe hurt one of us, right? Alone. A bomb maker putting in an IED can potentially take out 9-10 of us if he's good, right? So when we have dogs that get fines, it's pretty awesome.
Can you walk us through any of those, like a specific one, if you're able to?
Yeah.
What's that look like? And I'm just picturing that pucker factor when it's like, oh shit,
dude. You say that, it's a great story. Tom Biggs, my buddy who was in K9 before me, we were walking through a field one night, and he had Max, his dog Max.
Real life, not training.
Real life. He had Max off leash, and I was gonna like a dumbass. I was an alpha team leader. Like I should have known better. I was going to walk through this like choke point area, and I was tired. It had been a wild night, and I'm about to walk through this area, and he's like, yo, hold up. And like puts his hand out in front of me. I'm like, dude, come on, man. Like there's no bombs here. There has never been bombs on any target we've been on. Like I'm not worried about it. Let me walk through the fucking gate. And he puts Max on it, and Max alerts. Like literally, it was.
You're not a handler at this point, though.
No.
So do you recognize the alert, or?
No. Oh, it was evident. Because when your dog hits on real odor, because we train with real odor, it's the change of behavior is so drastic in some dogs that it's unmistakable. And Max had a very crisp alert. Max came up to this area, hit the seam of it, and started working his way across. And like you can see him working the scent cone, like just, and then like just locked.
On what? Like
It was just, I don't remember what kind of bomb it ended up being, or
But what's
what
he
it was made
alerting on? Like a wall, a fence, a tree?
It was the dirt,
Just dirt.
just, like down in the ground.
Okay.
And they're trained on 13 odors. All your nitrates, all your chlorates and stuff like that, TNT, your powders, all that stuff we train on. And then we train on foreign odor in country too, if you have the ability to get it, right? Or something that's, you know, relative to the local area, your area of operations. You train on that too. So I don't remember what components he alerted on. We don't stick around to find out.
No, I was gonna say.
Like,
But take us back there. How far away are you when he pinpoints?
like 10, 15 feet maybe.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And so, take me through this step by step.
Yeah. So he put his hand out, stops me. He lasers him up there, I think, if I remember correctly. Lasers him up there. And now, seeing it as a handler, he did it perfectly, right? Like, you start the dog in the area of success, the area that's going to pull the most odor, low spots. Putting him on the seam of where this little opening was to get him to go work forward and across this open area where people would walk. And he literally hits this edge of what looked to be like a wall or gate or something. And then like his nose just kind of starts like hunting around, right? And then as soon as he hit target odor or where he smelled it the most, it was just like locked up, sit, and was unmoving. Didn't even look at Tom. And I'm like, shit, I guess they are real, right? Like, because you always tell yourself like, oh, bombs aren't real. I just got to run. I got to get there, right? Like, no, they're very much real.
So what do you do at that point? He recalls Max off.
Yeah,
and
so
calls in the bomb squad, or
yeah, so he'll mark the dog. Dog returns, and like, at least with me and every other handler I know, you don't pay your dog on target. You don't like give the dog a toy on target. Which is why you should be on a varied reward schedule. But calls the dog back, leashes the dog up, he goes over, marks it out. Handler, that's your job. You're supposed to go up to that area.
fuck that.
No, I mean, yeah, that's the pucker factor part that I kind of enjoy. Is like, you got to go up there. You got to mark it off roughly. You got to push everybody out and around. You got to call EOD up.
Talk about trusting your dog too. You know, like
a lot of the times, like if it looks super sketch, you can stand a little bit of ways away and like toss a Kim.
Yeah.
In the general area, because like we don't confirm, like we confirm or deny the presence of odor.
Right.
We don't pinpoint where that shit's at. That's EOD's job.
Right.
He's got the equipment for that.
Did they go in there and
yeah?
find
Anytime we make a find, we call EOD up, and EOD either confirms or denies for sure whether or not there's a device there.
Now, do they go in there and blow it up, or do they?
Yeah, they could dead it. If we're in a hurry and we're trying to get out, or like it's just a non-issue for us that night that we don't need to take care of, we don't need to spend time on, we may just leave it, or render it, inoperable. But that's really each EOD guy's own SOP and TTP that they do. We just let them do their job. Because if we get a find, when we get a find, like mark, move everybody, call EOD, we're up and out of the way. Because we got to get back to the front and do route clearance.
Yeah. But still a great example of Max finding that. And worst case scenario would have been, Max isn't there, you guys walk through and someone hits you hit a pressure plate or whatever it is, or someone.
Because it wasn't just me that was walking up that.
Right.
It was I had my whole team behind me.
Yeah, we all could have been smoked.
Yeah. My brand new 19-year-old private, like, if that dog hadn't have been there, that could have been that kid's last mission ever. I don't know. It could have been mine.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had my son. So it definitely puts things in perspective. But your first one will make you shit yourself when you find one. Like,
I can imagine.
It's nuts. But we train odor a lot. Like I said, we train on live odor. We don't train on pseudo odor. Just because, like, your dog's smelling a Yankee Candle and you want to put your life on that? Like, no thanks. It's pretty insane.
I think we'll take a quick break, and then when we get back, we'll talk about your transition out of the military and what you're up to now.
Perfect.
This podcast is brought to you by DIY Canine, where we help you learn how to train your dog from 0 to hero.
All right, we're back from the break. And before we get into your transition out of the military,
Yeah.
I know there's one more story you'd like to tell us that has to do with your dog.
Yeah.
And let's get into it.
So I was called up to, perform actions. I went to go employ Sim and didn't realize that there was this like glass door in between me and Sim and where he was supposed to be going. So I suitcased the dog. And when I say suitcase, we grab them by their vest and we either put them up and in or under or like pretty much bowl them into whatever before we go into it. Well, I didn't see this glass door thing that was in front of us. So I suitcased Sim in through this door.
A glass door.
Glass door, like an idiot. Sim did not skip a beat. But that's why I love that dog, is because like I could jack up with him and the dude wouldn't faze him. Went in, got an engagement, good to go. Other than that, like he wasn't even really cut up. I thought I cut him up real bad, but it was just some other liquid all over him. And
Or somebody else's.
yeah.
And they didn't have time to, oops.
Yeah, no.
Oops,
And like
time out.
when the situation calls for it, like you got to go,
Yeah.
right? Like
I'm assuming you guys went through that door right after
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
if dog's going in, like we're going in. But yeah, that was a fun one. I felt like an idiot. Definitely learned a lot from that. And you never do that again. You always check the door. Never trust the people in front of you with the little stuff, Hey, is it open? Yeah. It wasn't open. Oh shit, sorry man. Like
Oh, Jesus. But that's not only the training y'all do, but sometimes people ask, why do you all use Malinois? That might be one reason why.
Because they're nuts.
You can throw them through a glass window if you had to.
You can throw them through a window.
I like it.
They will go through a wall if you tell them to.
Yeah.
Mine will go through a wall just to see what's on the other side. Like he was chewing on my baseboard the other morning for the first time, and I'm like, yo, dude, don't start that. Because you're bored. Like, don't start that. Oh, another funny story I'll tell you. My buddies were at the beach doing PT. It's like what everybody gives a shit about being first bat is like, we're down by the beach. So they're like, oh, they're just the beach boys. They have life so easy down there. But we take the dogs out. We'll do PT out there. We'll, do some training out there because we try to train in different environments to keep the dogs' environmental sound.
Get them used to the sand, used to the water.
Yeah. But my buddy was like handling his dog and we were doing some bites and sent the dog for the bite. Did fine. Didn't like how the bite was going or something happened that he didn't like. Anyway, verbally outs the dog, calls the dog back. Like, he grabs the dog by the jowls and goes to do like a placement bite. We call it a staple bite. Goes to put the dog on. I guess momentum, sand shifting, whatever. Missed the decoy completely and stapled his own dog right onto his own leg. That dog is honestly kind of like that other dog that you were kind of talking about, Pluto, I think it was, where he was a super nice dog. He wasn't like soft, but he wasn't like super hard either. But his name was Jax, like real even keel dog. But that dog, when it was time to get real, that dog got real. Super awesome nose. He was another one of the pretty senior dogs. He got hurt on his last deployment before he retired. He got hurt, took a bunch of shrapnel. I think he had over 136 pieces of shrapnel in his body.
Oh,
they got him home. My buddy was working him. He took a lot of frag too that night, but Jax retired immediately after that because some of the frag was like, I want to say it was either close to his heart or close to a nerve in his back that if it moved anymore from any, further work, like it could render him like paralyzed or dead.
Yeah.
It sucks. He was a great dog, but they're tools at the end of the day. You have to.
Now, how does that work? Because like you said, the dog you have now, you were able to retire and take him with you, which is, I don't know how typical that is. Tell me about that.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's untypical, but it's also not super typical. Because if the dog still has life left, life. If the dog still has workability left,
You guys work them to what age, ballpark?
generally about 8. But if for some reason that we're getting rid of a dog before that, like environmental issues or issues that we don't have time to fix, that maybe a police department will have the time to fix, we'll send them out to a police department or an agency to where they can continue work and still serve a purpose and help. But
Is your unit very big on the dogs being very quiet?
yes, that's paramount important. The dogs have to be quiet.
So we know a lot of dogs, let's say a lot, but a lot of the dogs that we get as hand-me-downs from the SF units and whatnot, fantastic dogs. That seems to be the one big issue that they're like, hey, look, perfect in all aspects, just won't shut the hell up.
Yeah, just won't
We're like, hey, we'll take it because we like our dogs being vocal.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a time we'd like them maybe on a SWAT dog. We're going to ask the dog to be quiet, but a general patrol dog, we're good with them being vocal.
Yeah. And like we accept some vocalization, right? Like I'm talking bare minimum. Like my dog Sim, if we're close to the target, a dude will sit there and whine and squeak, like real high pitched. But he won't sit there and lose his mind. If I get close enough and a bunch of people are running around, he may.
It's already on at that point, though.
Yeah, but it's already on. If I'm that close, like some shit's going down. But yeah, we don't like noisy dogs.
And to be clear, why is it a problem if dog gets excited and starts barking as dogs do?
Well, for the specific reason of, speed, surprise, and violence of action. The main thing is surprise. We get to the target quick. We want to surprise whoever we're going after. We don't want them to know that we're there. So we want to maintain noise and light discipline as much as possible.
And a barking dog will give you away
Yeah, a
pretty
barking
quick.
dog will give you away. And on top of that, like if your dog just starts losing its shit in a pitch black valley,
Oh, that'll just echo through the whole fucking valley, yeah.
and if there are bad guys in that valley and they know that valley like the back of their hand because they live there, like they already have the upper hand on you. And then all of a sudden they hear this foreign dog start losing its mind. Because I venture to say you could probably tell the difference between an Afghani dog that's feral versus a Malinois that's a trained Malinois that's very healthy.
When you start getting good at it, you've been in it long enough, like you can pick up not only like maybe roughly what breed it is you're hearing. Malinois definitely have a particular sound to their bark.
Oh yeah.
But there's actually a funny story with I want to say it's actually the owner of Pluto who ends up Manny. He ends up becoming a trainer, and Manny was on a cruise with his wife, but they're still at the port. And he was with his wife. He's on vacation, man. They just got on the boat, getting ready to go eat or whatever. And he hears a dog barking, like, and at a distance, he goes, "Honey, that sounds like, Fido."
Yeah.
What? He goes, "I'm telling you, I know that dog's bark. That's such and such."
Yeah.
And he goes out and he looks down, and sure enough, it was one of our retired handlers who had left a couple years earlier, who took his dog with him after retirement and was doing civilian EOD work, like I used to do. And he goes, "Hey, bro, I knew it was him, man. What's up?"
Yeah.
But when you get good, you can pick up on the actual dog's, what their particular bark sounds like.
Yeah.
But anyways.
And that's crazy. I love like when handlers get that good, that they can identify stuff like that. But yeah, it'll give away your position real quick. And that will draw a lot of attention to you. And with attention comes gunfire in some cases. So you definitely want to maintain noise and light discipline as much as possible to effectively gain the element of surprise and momentum. Because we can gain surprise again, even after clearance. After we go loud, right? We throw a couple flashbangs. Maybe we're going in and clearing. I send the dog in. We may get 2 rooms in, and we may stop for a second and just listen. And I'll hold the dog.
Hear who's racking a gun, or
I want to see if anybody's down there moving, hiding, nestling in, because that's information that I can pull in.
Yeah.
And then I can apply the dog. Right?
Well, you had said something earlier, which, I don't know if we deploy as much as we could or should in the law enforcement realm. You said you can be in the stack with your guys, send the dog, basically let the dog do what it's supposed to do. You do your job, but you're keeping an ear out for your dog because, depending upon what structure you're in, you probably can't see them.
Yeah.
but there's a lot to be gained just by listening.
Yes.
And I was picturing it as you were talking, and certain things were making sense to me. I'm like, yeah, I could see how you could really use just that sense to know a lot of what's going on. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'd like you to explain it to the folks at home. What could you be listening for?
So mainly when I'm in that and I'm working the dog with my ears, like I'm listening for his pace of his feet. If depending on the material, the floor, the levels, right? If there are multiple levels and I can hear him above me.
You can hear the click clack.
Yeah. And the pace of that. I can dictate what's going on based off of pace. Because he has a normal like searching pace. But if I hear and like there's a need for him to get somewhere quick, like okay, there's something or someone upstairs that's drawing his attention.
Or the stop of the foot. Maybe stop to smell something.
And I'm also listening for that. Because we wear these, at the time they were Peltors, but they're earmuffs to protect your ears from gunshots and explosions and stuff. But to me, like you hear more, it's clearer, right? So
they're noise canceling, but they're also amplifying.
Yes. And like I can hear Sim inhaling. So if we're moving silently through a house, if we're silent clearing a house and Sim's out in front of us, I can hear him like, and I know if he's taking in a big breath, maybe there's odor present. Maybe I need to halt the clearance, and maybe I need to go up there with a security element and see what my dog is doing, just enough to see whether or not there's odor present there. I mean, in some cases, if I can, without a shadow of a doubt, tell that my dog is in odor, it's atypical behavior for him, I'll call the dog back. We'll clear up as much as we can, and we just may not go in that until we clear the rest of the building. Or if the rest of the building is clear, we'll send DOD in there with a security element.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask too. If he's in odor, how do you know if it's he's keying on an IED or he's keying on someone hiding in a closet?
And really, when we look at that, like for Sim, for my dog, when he's in man odor, it's frantic. Like
active alert.
He's got to get there now.
Is it barking? Does he bark?
No, he stands on two legs.
Okay.
He'll start he gets predatory. He starts searching with his eyes, which pisses me off. Like I want him to use his nose to get to the source of the man odor, but he becomes a predator and he starts getting frantic. Like he's trying to get to wherever.
So a lot of movement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rapid movement. Because that's the most satisfying thing for him. Finding a bomb, getting his ball, that idea to him is like, yeah, it's cool. Whatever. I get my tug, whatever. Dad's going to take it from me.
But that alert would be a lot more passive.
That would be a lot more passive. Lower state of drive.
Mm-hmm.
He gets into man odor. It's like red line. He's going.
So would you say, going back to the auditory part, if you hear him in another room, he's pacing, stops, and he's just not moving.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little pucker factor there, like, oh, shit.
Like maybe he's sitting on something. And at that point, I have to make guesses because I'm actively involved with something else too.
You guys ever put cameras on?
Yeah, they run cameras.
Did that ever help, or is it?
Oh, yeah. The cameras are awesome in the right setting. They're very finicky, and like if I go underground with it, right, it'll get staticky. If I'm in between a lot of concrete and him with the camera on, there's going to be some interference there. So it's very finicky in reference to the environment that the camera's operating in, right? But as a handler, you need to know that. You need to know what the limitations of your gear are so you can effectively use it. But if I hear him moving around and he's stopping and he's quiet, generally for Sim, that means he's in odor of like bomb,
explosive
odor, right? If I hear him move rapidly, stop, and then like start scratching, that's his shit. He starts aggressing.
Yeah.
Right. Luckily, it's not the odor. He never well, that's a lie. I think one time I've seen him aggress a hide, right? But he'll start aggressing like the door or whatever.
It's a different outcome.
Okay, there's man here. Yeah. Somebody's hiding, right? Or he'll get vocal, like he'll go into an alert or like a bark and hold or something like that, which he went into a bark and hold on the fucking UPS guy on my front porch the other day. So that was real cool. But it's a very obvious change of behavior between the two. But you have to have you have to be paying attention to a lot of things when you're a handler like that. And like when you're young and you're trying to figure it out, it's a lot. That's why like our timeline in canine kind of sucks. If you're in my unit, you get 2 years there. That's what your initial assignment is. Max is 2 years. And if you're a canine handler, like, at 2 years, you're just getting it. Your feet are just starting to get wet. You're starting to feel confident.
All right.
And then they yank you out of there because career progression.
Yeah.
Right. But that's something we always advocated for, was more time. But you have to be.
And you were able to finesse the system, right? You were able to
Yeah.
stay in a little longer than, well, not 2 years in canine. You did what, 5 plus?
Yeah, five-ish around.
You told me off camera you were able to, get some paperwork, push one way or the other, and made it happen. So you got more time in.
Now that I'm not in the military, my leaders can hear this and just be like, "Fuck." But yeah, you pencil whip some times, and you set yourself up in an advantageous position.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be considered for leadership roles in my kennel. So I eventually worked myself up to assistant kennel master, and it's kind of like the best worst position. It's the worst because everybody that I know that's ever been in that position has gone mentally insane. Just like you're just dealing with everybody's problems, training problems, admin problems,
Dog problems.
And it's stressful. And then you're a backup handler too. And then on top of that, like, you're also a senior handler, so you got to train with the guys. You got to set training up. You got to bring in other experts to train your guys, because if you're not training with other trainers, then you're jacked up. But I never understood that. Like, why don't you bring people in from an outside agency or whatever, or company, to teach what you need to learn?
Egos.
Yeah, egos, essentially, is what it boils down to. But I was in charge of all that eventually, like towards the end, because I was focused on getting out, like transitioning into the real world, civilian world. I was trying to figure that whole process out, because the military does not help you with it. And that in and of itself was difficult.
I guess, at what point do you decide, hey, this is it, man, this is my last, your last sign up, you're not re-enlisting?
Well,
what was the breaking point, or what made that decision?
I got home from, my last deployment, and I don't know, maybe it was just because I was already missing home.
At this point, you got a wife and kids?
I got a wife and kids. I got a young son. And then, my wife had told me that she was pregnant. Because after I got home, there was a point where I could have got pulled out on another one that was no notice, where they just were like, "Hey, you're going now." Right. And then just in my head, I'm like, okay, well, now it's more than just me, right? I got a wife, I got one kid, one on the way. Like, I want to keep fighting more, but I also want to be a dad, because it means a lot to me. My dad was a single parent, and he was a police officer on top of that. And as you know, the schedules suck sometimes. And I had to grow up pretty quick. I had a younger brother I had to take care of. And I just remember that as part of my childhood. And this is not a knock on my father whatsoever, but like, Dad had to do things to provide for us, and that involved him not being there.
Yeah.
And I think that I reached a point in my career where what I wanted and the risks I was willing to take wasn't enough for me anymore. My family meant more. My wife and my son and my daughter meant more. And I wanted to be dad. I wanted to be there to take him to T-ball. I wanted to be there to be able to coach T-ball. And like, take my daughter to dances and stuff like that. And if I'd already had a bunch of close calls, you know, like almost stepped on bombs. I've had grenades thrown at me. I've been shot at, almost been shot multiple times. I've been very close to numerous explosions. I've had my fair share of fun stuff. I've kicked in the doors. I've jumped out of the airplanes. I've been in the gunfights. Like, I wanted to be dad, you know?
I think it gets a lot harder too. It was a big change for me, same when I had kids. It's a lot harder to do the things you need to do.
Yeah.
Literally kick down the doors you need to kick down when you know you got kids waiting for you at home.
It's always there in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I mean, it slows you down in a good way, maybe makes you make smarter decisions.
Yeah.
But it also slows you down maybe in a bad way where you're second guessing certain things and you're kind of stalling and it's tough. But it is a very big change, at least it was for me, on choices I made in my career, or literally choices I would make, you know, in the moment to moment, second to second.
Yeah.
Just being a little less risky. So, you know, and it's two ways to think about it. If I may summarize what you said, you wanted to be there as a father in two ways. Number one, you want to survive.
Yeah.
You go and do one more deployment. Well, who's going to take care of your wife and your two young kids
Yeah.
if you get blown up?
What if this one's it?
Yeah.
You know?
And 7 deployments in, enough close calls. And then also, it's got to be hard, man, with the, hey, I know I just got back, but I got to go again. I'll be back in a few months.
Yeah.
And and I'm assuming the unit you're in, you can't always tell them exactly where you're going or what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's hard enough for our wives. I mean, the divorce rate is off the charts with law enforcement, but
No.
you know, my wife would freak the fuck out when she'd call me and I won't answer, or I should have been home already and I'm not home, and no one's notifying her what's going on. And it could be nothing. We could just be on a hot call that I just don't have a minute to call her. And I always try to calm her down and say, like, no news is good news. If you're not getting a call, that means everything's all right. We're just busy. But that's easy to say.
Yeah.
And it is not easy for her to just sit there waiting and wondering what the fuck is going on. And I experience it now too, now that I'm out of the game, but still have friends that are in it. And we'll be on the call talking shit, and you'll hear the call come in. And I might not hear exactly what was said on the radio, or sometimes I do, but you hear the beep tone, which lets it know, like, it's an emergency call. And then my best friend has to go like, hey, bro, I'll call you back. And I'm like, fuck, man. Like, I'm not there. I can't be there. I can't help him. I don't know what the call is. And nothing I can do about it. I feel like my wife probably felt like. Yeah. And I know it's a hot call he's going to. And the best thing I can throw out without sounding like, you know, whatever it is, it's like, just be careful, man. Be careful. Yeah. You know, there's no time to sit there and be like, all right, bro, how are you going to approach the call? Like, can we talk this out? No, it's like, he's got to focus on what he needs to focus on. I can't sit there and be on the phone with him fucking states away. All I can do is be like, man, I hope that training sticks. I hope he doesn't do some cowboy move.
I started noticing that in myself, right? Like, I would be getting ready to do things. I'd be getting ready to go on a deployment. I'd be on the deployment getting ready to do things. And I'm noticing myself get distracted. Whereas like previously, when it was just me, and then even when it was just me and my wife, I could focus. Yeah. I could put her out.
You made peace with death, I think you could say, right?
Yeah. If I died, she'd be okay. She'd get $400,000. She'd find a new guy. She'd be happy, right? I'd be in an urn on the mantle, though, because I'm just going to haunt for the rest of my life. I told her that. Like, if I died, she got to put me in an urn on the mantle. Just
on the nightstand, maybe.
Yeah, that dude can know that my eyes are there. But I had made peace with that.
All right.
You know, like,
you have to. That's the only way you go forward, yeah.
Because I had to focus on what I was doing at that given time. And because it wasn't just my life that depended on that focus. I had young guys. I had other guys that were depending on me. But then when kids came into play, because kids will change your life. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
I would find myself getting detracted from focus. And then I started second guessing things. And I started making moves that I wouldn't normally make. And I was like, okay, well, if this is too much for you now, Jared, we are at a crossroads. Because I had the opportunity to move the next level up too. on my last deployment, I was approached, and a number of us were approached, and they're like, yeah, you guys need to go to the selection and come over here. And, I tossed it around, and the juice wasn't worth the squeeze for me anymore. My family meant more to me. It didn't mean enough to me to go to the next level.
It's probably a hard decision.
It was. But, oddly enough, I don't regret it. I don't think I'll ever regret it because I chose my family.
Yeah. It would have just been more of the same.
Yeah, more of the same.
More, like a lot more.
Yeah.
More deployments, more risk.
Higher danger, higher everything.
Yeah.
And if I was already gone enough as a Ranger, like, I would be gone even more as the next level up.
Mm-hmm.
Not knocking the dudes that are there or that go that route.
Yeah, more power
to you.
Yeah.
My family just meant more to me at the time.
Yeah. You got to sacrifice there. Like,
yeah. And like, looking back, another reason I don't regret it is because I'm still doing what I love now. Like, yes, am I clicking doodles? Yeah. Am I biting bad guys? Am I finding bombs? No. But you know what I am doing? I'm teaching law enforcement officers how to effectively be dangerous and controlled, which is something I'm passionate about and I'm trying to do more of. Because guys that get out of our niche in special operations that don't want to continue that, they have to have an outlet for that, or else you're just chasing the dragon in the civilian world, which you're never going to catch it. Like, I have a lot of buddies that have gone down that road and they're always in grasp of the dragon doing dangerous stuff, but they can't get there. There's nothing that replaces that adrenaline dump.
Mm-hmm.
But I can get close to it and I can help people in the process. I help my brothers by getting them out of, the military when they're done. And then I get them empowered and I get them teaching people who are still doing stuff stateside, police officers, SWAT officers, other agencies. Because we've learned valuable lessons through pain and sometimes blood, and if we can teach those lessons in a controlled environment and have people learn from it, then why not?
Was there any final factor where you're like, maybe you were on the fence for a bit and something happened, or was it an easy decision for you? Was it like a phone call? Like where you said, this is the day?
I think there was a little bit of a moment. It's nothing crazy, but like my wife and I were having a conversation because I told her, like, hey, I got approached to go to this, next level up. We wouldn't be in regiment anymore. You guys would be more taken care of if I made it, hinging on if I made it.
Yeah.
Which I was going to die before I quit if I went there. But I was like, you guys would be more taken care of. We'll be in a nicer area, like more amenities, more community for you. She's like, well, you're missing a key factor there, Jared. And I'm like, what? I was like, I'm providing you all of this. I don't see what factor I'm missing. She's like, well, you're not there. And that like kind of hit me, right? Like, she's like, Coy's going to grow up. Coy's my son. And like, we were going to have my daughter.
And by you're not there, meaning you're not here. You're not.
I'm not
home.
Physically there. And a son needs his father, So she's like, you're going to be gone all the time. What? You'll be in and out of their life. You'll leave for a while, come back. They're a different age and they look completely different to you.
Yeah, and they don't know you.
Yeah. Is that what you want? And that kind of hit me hard. My wife is a realist and she has no problem hitting me with the real shit. She's awesome because she keeps me grounded in that aspect. But I think that was kind of the conversation that I was like, all right, I'm done. Time to hang it up.
And then now you had to start thinking about, all right, what am I going to do with my life? Yeah.
Yeah.
The Rangers hadn't prepared you for an office job or anything else. They taught you how to kill people.
Yeah, effectively. They taught me how to kill people, how to lead when people are at their weakest, and like how to physically do things. Right. All of which are not non-transferable to the civilian world unless you go directly into federal law enforcement or law enforcement in general.
Which is what a lot of guys do, right?
Which is a lot of guys do that by default because they're like, oh, this is all I'm good at.
Yeah.
This is
Easy
the only thing
transition.
I'll ever be good at.
Yeah.
And they pigeonhole themselves into that. But I had a friend of mine. I attribute my ignition point to him. I was always competing with him when I was a handler. I always thought he was better than me at handling a dog, some of the missions he got, some of the other things he was able to achieve. And I was always competing with him, but he's one of my best friends to this day. And I was like, dude, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was like, I'm going to get out of the military. I had no transferable skills. I don't want to go back to fucking school because I'm 27 years old. I had been to war multiple times over, and now I got to sit in a college class with all these kids and what? Talk to myself? Just keep doing dogs. Like, you love dogs. If that's what you want to do, like, keep doing it. And I was like, well, how the fuck am I going to do that? I want to be a police canine handler and get sued for using my dog? No. He's like, no, dude, open your own business. I was like, I can't run a business. I was immediately like, every option he was giving me, like, I was already self-sabotaging. I was like, nope, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. But here I am, coming from an 18-year-old kid in special operations to now a grown man with a family, all in that time.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that I've experienced and been through, and like sitting here telling myself I couldn't do it, just because it was new.
Yeah.
And the military doesn't prepare you for exiting. The loudest day of your military career is the day that you enter, because it's all fanfare and graduations and everybody's clapping and happy. The quietest day is the day you get out. There's no thank yous for anything that you did for your unit, the army, the country, nothing like that. Not that we need it. But my last day in the military was a very quiet drive in my car off base. And then it's just done.
Yep.
And now I have to wrestle with finding this new identity, right? I knew I still wanted to do something with dogs. So I did start the business while I was still in. I got the opportunity to go train with Justin, and like that dude, like I cannot thank him enough for what he provided to me. Not only did he let me study under him, and he gave me all of his knowledge freely. He really like helped me get up and running with things that I should be doing, things I need to think about with social media, how to handle clients, how to teach lessons, troubleshooting, like you name it, man. He gave me everything he could. Still does to this day. Literally the only reason I'm sitting in this chair, right? And like my first tactical seminar, if you will, he told me, he's like, yo, I want you to come help teach this. Since then, it's put me in contact with great trainers. Todd Mona. I work a lot with him. We kind of teach our stuff in conjunction to each other because his building search advancement works really well with integration and like tactical employment. So we just kind of sandwich those together and then teach them. And since doing that, like other former Rangers, I've been able to pull into that and be like, hey, go, both of them cops, go teach what we know. You guys know how to speak law enforcement. I don't. That's where I lack. But I teach the formal tactic stuff, all the like non-PC stuff, shit that Rangers would do. Like one dude was like, well, what if he comes out of the door and like tries to grab your barrel or your, rifle or whatever? And I was like, well, first off, why is your fucking barrel in front of the door? Secondly, yeah, just turn it, drive it into his chest and And then my buddy John, who's a cop, is like, no. Like, let me translate that for you. And I was like, oh yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But they do a very good job of putting it in law enforcement terms, whereas like I do tactics and like making people dangerous. And I get them thinking. Like it blew this chick's mind. She was like standing behind the door. I put them in a hallway and I told them that there was a threat in depth, but I didn't tell them where. And they came to a choke point where it was these metal doors, but there's a window in it. And I stopped everybody. Like one guy was in a door jam. He was well covered. And then there was a guy over here, but there's this chick out in the middle of the hallway standing in front of this door or behind this door. And I was like, hey, let me ask you something right now. I was like, are you behind something that will stop bullets? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, you want to answer that again? She's like, no, I am. I'm behind cover. I'm like, you're standing in front of a door that has a window on it that's exposing from here up on you, right? Like, she's like, oh, I didn't even notice that was there. And that's the big thing is like, just as we unlock pet dogs, right, to get them to do things, I want to unlock people. And since dog training is a microcosm for human behavior, I can use the concept of pressure and stress to train people in a tactical scenario. And I want to get them thinking. I want to get them paying attention to their environment, how they can manipulate it and gain momentum if they lose it in the middle of a chaotic situation, right? And again, going back to Justin Rigney, he allowed me to kind of start doing that. And without him and Max, like, I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing right now. Definitely wouldn't be to the level that I'm currently at. You know, Justin taught me Nipopo, got me into that world, went and got silver certified. He generously helped me out with my gold certification, you know, donated a spot to me to one of his first classes. Like, I don't forget about any of that. And I just want to do that for other people and officers that go to war, if you will, every day. Whereas, like, I would come home from a rotation and I was off for X many months.
Right.
I didn't have to worry about anybody shooting me on the daily. I didn't have to worry about, you know, any of the stuff that police officers have to worry about. Because, like, not only do you go and you know, I say fight, but it's the wrong word. You go and you fight your enemy day in, day out, but then you got to live in it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you see those people out. Like, I know my dad would see many people that he arrested out, some of which were horrible individuals. So it's very close to my heart that I make people competently dangerous.
I like that.
Because that's what's lacking. In special operations, like, we never shy away from, you know, hard stuff. And sometimes training hard and realistic and failing multiple times is exactly what's needed in training for people to learn a lesson. That's what I want to bring. Because if you don't practice deeply, if you don't focus on your failures, your mistakes, and you don't observe them unemotionally, you're never going to progress. That's dog training. That's Nipopo. It's deep practice. I mean, people do it with sports. Like, pro baseball players don't get good at swinging a bat, you know, just willy-nilly after a ball. They do it slowly. Tennis players don't get good at what they do by doing it. You know, soccer players. In Brazil, they play a game called futsal before they even touch a real soccer ball. All in that canalized court and everything, heavier ball. So
I think, and I agree with you, not to cut you off, but training is significantly lacking in the law enforcement world. We don't get near the amount of training you guys get in the special forces community or otherwise. You know, you get your few months in the police academy, you hit the ground running, and the rest is on the job training, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's also fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
And once you're on the job, it is that you don't get pulled or cycled out, A, for a break, or B, for intense training. If you're lucky enough, you know, you can sign up for some training here or there. Mm-hmm. But even then, I think a lot of the training that we sign up for is softer, kinder, gentler, sets you up to succeed, which isn't real life. Mm-hmm. And so it's very rare to come across a hardcore, you know, actual training where you're going to get your ass handed to you a little bit. It's out there.
Yeah. Which it kind of blew my mind the first time I went and taught, right? It was like
clash of cultures a little bit.
Yeah. It physically pissed me off. Like, in my mind, because I was just fresh out, like, how can you not take your job so seriously that you're not willing to train as hard as you possibly can in order to survive it? So the first seminar, I was like, what the fuck? These dudes are just like walking through here. Like, there's no urgency. There's no nothing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, just another dog
This
problem.
was a canine related one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just another dog problem. Like,
yeah. Some, and I'll be the first to admit it, and some of our canine guys can be super lackadaisical.
yeah. And like, don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place for just the dog problem, you know? Like, on a ratio. Like, you can't be just like lollygagging through every damn rep. But like, it pissed me off. But like, I didn't want to be that guy. So I told a couple guys, I'm like, hey, we need to start moving like faster, because there are real things that happen when you don't. And they're like, well, you know, it's a fucking training, like da da da. I was like, well, do you want to go the fuck home? You know, like, are you trying to get shot? That would never happen. And so you can say that, you would put your life on it. You know, like, it's shit like that makes me mad. It's this the complacency.
Yeah.
But I took that into AT Canine when I went and taught, you know, and I was a little bit more tactful about it. And I was like, hey, this is why. Because that's what I realized I was missing. I didn't explain the why enough. I was like, this is why we need to do it this way. This is why it's important. This is why I'm an asshole about it. Right? Like,
that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I didn't do that the first time. Yeah.
You feel like they should know, but yeah.
Yeah. And maybe
some of these
because
some of these folks are coming from agencies that maybe don't get a lot of action, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But that does not mean, I say, for all the more reason you need to train harder. And I tell them, when you leave this seminar, anybody in here, your very next call could be the call. So fucking let's get ready.
And like, you know, it's easy to say like, oh, well, you're special operations, you have all the time, da 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 da. It's like, yeah, you know what I did most of the time is train. I have exponentially more training hours than I have deployment hours, right? Like, even outside of dog handling, I have exponentially more.
Yeah, and
training time.
I'll be the first one to tell you, it's an excuse. It's a shitty excuse. There's plenty of time. You make time.
Exactly.
Find a way. Plenty of time.
Exactly. A law enforcement guy will always have more deployments than anybody in my sector, unless there's another giant war, which, given the state of the world, that's possible. But
well, given the state of the streets right now, it's getting hot.
Yeah.
It's been hot, but yeah. Well, anyways, let's talk about that real quick as we kind of start to wrap this up. So you've transitioned out of the military. Now you are the owner of Southern State Canine.
Yep.
You specialize in pet obedience.
Yep.
Which is, you know, you do 3-week, 4-week, and 6-week board and trains.
Yep.
Out of your home, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Based out of
Richmond Hill,
which is outside of
Savannah, Georgia.
Savannah. Yeah, I couldn't get. I was S something. Yeah. Savannah, Georgia. We all know it. Beautiful place to visit, and so.
Yeah.
I've seen your stuff on Instagram, on social media, just again by just following Justin, and you pop up in my feed, and I've been watching, doing excellent stuff. And so anyone that's interested in getting their dog trained to a very high level as a pet dog, definitely reach out. All your information will be posted below. But furthermore, as we've been discussing, you know, Jared is out there teaching the gospel, so to speak, to help police canine handlers perform their jobs better. It's a fucking dangerous profession. We would say first one's in, last one's out was our canine unit, you know. And if you're looking to increase your skill set and get your guys and gals up to speed, and that's what happens sometimes too. You might even have a squared away supervisor, a squared away trainer that knows what they're doing, but sometimes all it takes is bringing in that outside voice for the people to actually, you know, shut up, pay attention. And if you're looking for someone to help you out with that, Jared's going to be the man. And I look forward to continuing the conversation, even offline here, to see how we can help you out with that or participate. It sounds like we're not too different in our. Maybe you don't want both of us at the same seminar, because I'm constantly, hey Garrett, hey, gotta take it down a little bit. They're not ready for all that. Okay, no problem. So, but you live and you learn. Anyways, it's been a real pleasure to have you. I know there's a lot more to talk about. A lot of stuff we couldn't talk about just because of it's too recent in the past, and you don't have the clearance to talk about it as of yet. So maybe we'll have you back on some other time, and when that window passes, and we can talk about some of these things. But really appreciated you having you on, and thank you very much for your service. And we look forward to see what else you're going to bring to the table, both in the civilian world and in the law enforcement world, in the training aspect. And I know you just got started, but having been under the tutelage of Justin Rigney, that's like adding rocket fuel to your resume.
Yes.
And we're going to have some conversations too about how, again, we can help out and we can be a part of that journey as well.
Yeah.
Anyone that's a friend of Justin's is a friend of mine, and he didn't hesitate 1 minute to recommend having you on the podcast, and speaks very highly of you. And that type of recognition isn't just handed out. Trust me. So you've obviously proven yourself. Just based on this conversation, you've been there and done that. And to get Justin's recommendation, like I said, doesn't come easy. So very proud to have met you. Very happy to have had you on. And if there's anything else you want to tell the folks before we pull the plug.
No, man. First and foremost, I appreciate the opportunity again to come here and be on this. You invited me into your lovely home and sit here and have a conversation with you. I'm grateful for that opportunity. If anybody ever wants to reach out to me, they know where to find me on all my social media handles. At Southern State Canine on Instagram, Facebook, same thing. I answer all my messages, so anybody can reach out. But yeah, man, I've really appreciated it.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what the future holds for you. I know it's going to be a very bright future, considering where you've been, who you studied under, and where you're at now. We're just getting started. So
yeah.
Congratulations.
Trying.
I'm proud of you, man. If no one has said it,
Appreciate it.
I'm very proud of you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Garrett.
That's a wrap. Well, you heard it here, folks. Many, many more guests to come. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.
If you like this podcast and you want to hear others like it, make sure to click the link in the bio or check out our playlist. We got plenty more to sink your teeth into.